Sign this before the panna cotta comes out, my future mother-in-law demanded, sliding a fountain pen engraved with her family's crest across the rehearsal dinner table while 40 of her wealthiest friends watched. I smiled, picked up the pen, signed my name on the final page without reading a single word above it, and slid a plain manila folder to her horrified lawyer that legally dismantled her entire real estate empire in less than 30 seconds. To understand how a 32-year-old event florist ended up outmaneuvering a commercial real estate dynasty over a plate of seared scallops, I have to take you back to a Tuesday afternoon in early March, and a quiet phone call I was never supposed to hear. I've spent the last 7 years of my life building my company, Bloom and Brass, from an absolute literal folding table in my cramped apartment into a high-end event floral and design firm. I started with $500 in a borrowed delivery van. Today, I have 6 full-time employees, a massive climate-controlled warehouse on the industrial side of the city that I am still aggressively paying off, and a client list that includes minor celebrities and corporate galas. I know the exact price of imported white ranunculus, I can wire a floral chandelier blindfolded, and I am fiercely proud of every single callus on my hands. That's how I met Julian. He's an architectural engineer who was hired to check the structural integrity of a massive suspended floral installation I was building for a museum gala. He walked into my warehouse smelling like black coffee and cedar wood, took one look at my rigging diagrams, and started asking me incredibly intense, specific questions about load-bearing weights. I thought he was trying to micromanage me. He wasn't. Julian just genuinely loved knowing how things work. He is the kind of man who reads the terms and conditions on software updates. He double-checks math not because he doesn't trust you, but because the certainty of numbers brings him peace. We clicked instantly. He started showing up at my warehouse with dinner when I was working late. He learned my golden retriever Barnaby's exact walk schedule, and within a year and a half, we were engaged. Julian's mother, Eleanor Sterling, was a different story entirely. Eleanor ran Sterling Enterprises, a colossal commercial real estate development firm that had basically built half the luxury high-rises in our state since her husband passed away a decade ago. Eleanor was polite to me in the way you are polite to a server who accidentally brings you the wrong vintage of wine. She wore pearl necklaces that looked like choke chains and spoke in a low, flat whisper that forced everyone in the room to lean in and hang on to her every word. The first time I met her, she stood up at a family dinner, raised a glass of expensive champagne, and said she was thrilled to welcome someone who understood that the Sterling family aggressively protects what is built inside this family, and never lets the outside world dilute it. Everyone at the table laughed and clinked their crystal glasses like it was a lovely, welcoming toast. To me, it sounded exactly like a threat wrapped in velvet. I brushed it off, telling myself that incredibly wealthy people just have a weird, tribal way of looking at the world. Everything was going perfectly fine. We had planned a beautiful, elaborate wedding for late September. But then, in early March, everything suddenly shifted. Eleanor called Julian and told him that the wedding needed to be moved up to the last weekend of May. She framed it entirely as excitement and maternal impatience. Why wait until the fall? The spring is so much better for the venue anyway, she said, her voice echoing out of Julian's phone on speaker while I was trimming eucalyptus stems in the kitchen. Julian, to his absolute credit, pushed back. He told her we had vendors booked, that my own business schedule was packed in May, and that rushing it made no sense. Eleanor immediately cut him off, her voice dropping into that chilling, authoritative whisper, muttering something about critical family timing and financial restructuring phases. Before hanging up, I tried to let it go. I told myself it was just a controlling mother trying to assert dominance over her son's big day. But 2 weeks later, I started noticing Julian taking phone calls out on the balcony instead of in the living room. They were always short, clipped conversations. He'd come back inside looking physically ill, his jaw tight. When I asked him what was going on, he'd just rub the back of his neck, say it was just some exhausting corporate trust stuff with my mother, and immediately change the subject. I didn't want to press him because I trusted him, but my gut was screaming that something was deeply wrong. The third major red flag wasn't a phone call. It was a PDF document. Julian forwarded me an advance copy of our prenuptial agreement. He attached a sweet, apologetic note saying his mother's lead attorney had drafted it, that he hadn't even had time to read the whole massive thing himself yet, and that I should just have my lawyer look it over so we could sign it and get his mother off our backs. I opened the document on my laptop while standing in my warehouse. Most of it was incredibly standard, boring boilerplate language about keeping premarital assets separate. And then I reached section 8.4. The header read, Integration of Independent Enterprises. The clause explicitly stated that any independent corporate entity or business owned by the incoming spouse, would have its complete operational control, asset management, and financial oversight automatically transferred to the Sterling Family Trust the absolute second our marriage certificate was filed with the state. Not shared. Not protected. Transferred. I read the paragraph 6 times. The words started blurring together. My stomach completely dropped out of my body, giving me that nauseating, weightless feeling you get right before a car crash. They weren't just trying to protect their own money, they were trying to legally absorb my entire company. I confronted Julian that night. I kept my voice dead calm, handed him my laptop, and told him to read Section 8.4. He read it, standing in our kitchen with his briefcase still in his hand, and I watched the color completely drain from his face. He looked horrified. He swore to me, up and down, that he had no idea that clause was in there, that it had to be some insane, outdated template his mother's lawyer accidentally left in the document. He promised me he would have it struck from the agreement immediately. He tried. 3 days later, he came home looking utterly defeated. He told me that his mother's attorney said it was standard family protective language and that Eleanor was absolutely refusing to remove it. Nobody, however, could explain to me what exactly the family needed protecting from. I decided to ask Eleanor myself. The following Sunday, we were at her sprawling estate for a family dinner. I cornered her in her massive, marble-covered kitchen while the caterers were clearing plates. I asked her, keeping my tone perfectly polite and even, exactly what Section 8.4 was supposed to accomplish. She didn't even blink. She slowly poured herself a glass of sparkling water, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "Generational wealth requires generational discipline. My dear, Julian's father built Sterling Enterprises from nothing. We are entering a very delicate financial phase with our new developments, and I am simply not going to allow our trust's structural integrity to be diluted by outside liabilities." When I asked her what delicate financial phase meant, she gave me a condescending, pitying smile. "You don't need to worry your pretty head about corporate business you aren't a part of." It was an incredibly bizarre thing to say, considering she had just handed me a legal document explicitly designed to force my business to become a part of it. I left the house that night with my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. But the final piece of the puzzle, the thing that made me stop being confused and start getting furious, came from inside the family. 2 weeks before the rehearsal dinner, at my own bridal shower, Julian's younger sister, Clara, pulled me into a guest coat closet. Clara is the black sheep of the family, mostly because she actually has a moral compass. She looked around to make sure nobody was listening, grabbed my arm, and whispered, "Have you signed the prenup yet?" When I told her I hadn't, she let out a massive sigh of relief. Then she told me her secret. 3 years ago, when Clara married her husband David, Eleanor had forced a nearly identical clause into their prenuptial agreement. Clara, who was young and desperate for her mother's approval, signed it. David owned a highly successful logistics startup. The moment they got married, the Sterling Family Trust legally seized operational control of David's company. They froze his payroll, used his business accounts as a slush fund to move money around for their real estate deals, and almost drove his startup into total bankruptcy. It took David 2 years and hundreds of thousands of dollars in brutal litigation to finally sever his company from the trust. My mother never apologized, Clara whispered, tears in her eyes. She ruined the first 2 years of our marriage. Do not sign that document. Get your own ruthless lawyer. Arthur Vance, her attorney, is a snake. Do not trust him. I thanked her, gave her a hug, and walked out of that closet feeling a cold, calculating calmness wash over me. I didn't tell Clara that I already had a plan forming in my head. The very next day, I was at a venue walkthrough with a friend of mine, Marcus, who owns a massive event lighting company. We were chatting about industry gossip when Marcus casually mentioned that he had just pulled his entire lighting crew off a Sterling Enterprises job site. They stopped paying their invoices 3 months ago, Marcus said, shaking his head. Word on the street is that a massive concrete supplier is suing them into oblivion, and Eleanor is bleeding cash trying to keep the company afloat. I froze. My brain finally connected all the dots. The rushed wedding. The bizarre trust clause. The sudden need to absorb my small, unassuming business. I immediately left the venue, sat in my van, and called Maya Lin. Maya is a ruthless, brilliant corporate attorney I met years ago when I catered a bar association event. She specializes in complex business litigation and closely held corporate trusts. Our first phone call lasted an hour. I read her Section 8.4. I told her about the rushed wedding date. I told her the rumor about the concrete supplier. Maya was dead silent for about 10 seconds. Then she said, "They aren't trying to steal your business because it makes money. They are trying to steal your business because it's a perfectly clean, invisible shell. They want to hide their assets inside your company." She told me she would pull the court filings and call me back. It took her paralegal exactly one afternoon at the county courthouse to find the smoking gun. Sterling Enterprises was being sued by Apex Concrete and Foundation for a staggering $2.8 million over breach of contract on a stalled luxury waterfront development. But it wasn't just a lawsuit. Apex had filed a motion for a prejudgment attachment, which meant that if the judge approved it, the court would instantly freeze all of Sterling Enterprises' bank accounts and assets before the trial even started. Maya called me into her office the next morning. She laid the 40-page lawsuit on her desk, tapped it with her pen, and explained the law to me like a surgeon explaining a fatal diagnosis. It's called a fraudulent transfer, Maya said, her eyes gleaming with a predatory legal excitement. When a company knows they are about to get their assets frozen by a court, they desperately try to move their money into hidden accounts, trusts, or shell companies so the creditors can't touch it. Courts look for what they call badges of fraud. Moving money to family members. Doing it right after a lawsuit is filed. Hiding assets in independent businesses. Eleanor is rushing this wedding so she can force your clean, debt-free LLC into her family trust. Once your business is legally absorbed, she will dump millions of dollars of sterling assets into your company's accounts to hide it from the judge. If she gets caught, your business takes the fall, and you go down for corporate fraud. I felt physically sick. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. It was pure, unadulterated rage. I had spent 7 years bleeding for my company, and this woman viewed it as nothing more than a convenient dumpster to hide her financial crimes. How do we stop it? I asked. Maya smiled. We don't just stop it. We legally trap them. Maya drew up an immediate, ironclad amendment to Bloom and Brass's LLC operating agreement. It was a heavily fortified anti-assignment clause. The legal jargon essentially stated that absolutely no membership interest, operational control, or financial authority of my company could ever be transferred, absorbed, or reassigned by marriage, court order, trust instrument, or any other mechanism without my explicit, notarized, written consent. This makes Section 8.4 of her prenup completely legally inert, Maya explained. If they try to absorb your business now, they are legally attempting to seize an asset they have no right to. And if they try to do it while actively dodging a $2.8 million lawsuit, it instantly proves to any judge in the state that they are committing blatant fraudulent concealment. We filed the amendment with the State Business Division immediately. I got the stamped, certified copies back the next day. I printed the amendment. I printed a savage, 2-page legal memo, Maya wrote explaining exactly why enforcing the prenup would constitute corporate fraud. And finally, I printed the first page of the massive $2.8 million Apex Concrete lawsuit, circling the case number in thick red ink. I placed all 3 documents inside a plain manila folder. And I didn't say a single word to Julian. Edit. A lot of people in the comments are asking why I didn't just dump Julian the second I found out about the prenup. Here is the truth. Julian is a victim of his mother's manipulation just as much as Clara was. He was intentionally kept entirely in the dark about the lawsuit and the financial ruin of the company. I loved him deeply, and I needed to give him the opportunity to prove whose side he was really on when the absolute truth was finally dragged out into the light. I needed to see what he would do when the mask fell off. Update 1. The week leading up to the rehearsal dinner was the most stressful period of my entire life. I ran my floral business on pure autopilot. I was designing massive floral arches for other people's weddings while knowing my own was a ticking time bomb. I kept the manila folder locked in the glove compartment of my car. I tried one last time to give Julian an out. I sat him down on the couch 3 days before the dinner and gently asked if we could just postpone the wedding back to September. I told him we were both too stressed. He looked at me with incredibly tired eyes, held my hands, and said he had begged his mother to postpone it, but she had broken down crying, screaming that the family was in a crisis and that she needed something positive to hold on to. He was completely exhausted, caught in the web of a master manipulator. I kissed his forehead, told him I loved him, and accepted that the peaceful route was officially dead. Update 2. The rehearsal dinner was held at the exact luxury waterfront development that was currently bankrupting Eleanor's company. Oh, the absolute irony. It was a stunning, unfinished penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. There were 40 guests, mostly Eleanor's wealthy board members, investors, and high society friends. The tables were draped in heavy silk, covered in crystal glassware, and illuminated by hundreds of floating candles. I sat next to Julian. Eleanor sat at the head of the massive table, draped in a designer gown that probably cost more than my delivery van. To her right sat Arthur Vance, her personal attorney and the architect of her shady corporate trusts. Arthur was a man who had represented the Sterling family for 25 years and always looked like he was the smartest person in the room. Dinner proceeded normally. The toasts were given. Clara gave a beautiful, emotional speech about Julian that made me tear up. And then, right as the servers began clearing the dinner plates to bring out the dessert, Eleanor made her move. She stood up, silencing the entire room with a gentle clinking of her glass. She reached into a leather briefcase at her feet and pulled out the massive, freshly printed prenuptial agreement. She walked over to me, placed it directly on top of my placemat, and set a heavy, engraved fountain pen down next to it. I know this isn't the most romantic moment, Eleanor said, her voice perfectly pitched to carry to every single person in the room, dripping with fake sweetness. But Arthur needs this finalized before the courthouse closes tomorrow for the filing deadline. Sign it before the panna cotta comes out, darling. The entire room went dead silent. 40 wealthy elites were suddenly staring at me, pretending not to watch, while watching me like hawks. It was a brilliantly designed trap. If I refused to sign it in front of all her friends, I looked like a gold-digging outsider attacking the family. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears, but my hands were completely steady. I looked up at Eleanor. I gave her the sweetest, most innocent smile I could muster. "Of course, Eleanor," I said loudly. I picked up the fountain pen. I flipped directly to the last page. I signed my name in big, looping cursive without reading a single word above it. Eleanor's eyes lit up with absolute triumph. She reached out to take the document back. "Actually," I said, my voice cutting through the silence like a knife, "I have something for Arthur." I reached down into my tote bag, pulled out the plain manila folder I had been guarding for 2 weeks, and slid it directly across the silk tablecloth. It stopped right in front of Arthur Vance. Arthur looked confused, but he opened the folder. I watched him read the first page, the state-certified LLC amendment proving my business could never be absorbed. His brow furrowed, then he flipped to the second page, Maya's brutal legal memo, outlining the exact statutes of corporate fraud. He swallowed hard. Then, he flipped to the third page, the $2.8 million Apex Concrete lawsuit. I will remember the look on Arthur Vance's face for the rest of my natural life. The smug, confident aura of a high-powered attorney instantly evaporated. All the blood completely drained from his face, leaving him looking like a ghost. His hands actually started to shake. He realized in a fraction of a second that not only was the prenup completely useless, but that I had documented, undeniable proof that he had drafted a legal document to facilitate the fraudulent hiding of assets. I had him dead to rights on a disbarment-level offense. "Arthur?" Eleanor asked, her fake smile faltering. "What is it?" Arthur didn't look at her. He didn't look at me. He closed the folder, stood up so fast his chair scraped loudly against the hardwood floor, and said, his voice trembling, "Eleanor, we need to speak in the hallway. Right now." Eleanor looked stunned. "Arthur, don't be ridiculous, we are in the middle of, right now, Eleanor." Arthur bellowed. It was the first time in 25 years anyone had ever heard him raise his voice at her. Eleanor actually flinched. She stood up and followed him out of the room. I let them have their private panic attack in the hallway for exactly 60 seconds. Then, I stood up from my chair. I looked around at the 40 guests, who were all staring at me in absolute, stunned silence. "I'll save everyone the mystery of what's in the folder," I said, my voice echoing clearly across the penthouse. Section 8.4 of that prenup was designed to legally force my small business into the Sterling family trust the moment I got married. I amended my company's operating agreement 10 days ago, so that is legally impossible. I paused, making eye contact with the board members at the end of the table. "It turns out," I continued, "the reason Eleanor rushed this wedding, and the reason she is desperately trying to absorb my company, is because Sterling Enterprises is currently being sued for $2.8 million by Apex Concrete. Eleanor isn't trying to protect her family's wealth. She is trying to use my business as a shell company to hide her money before the court freezes her assets for corporate fraud." Absolute pandemonium broke out. A woman at the end of the table dropped her wine glass, shattering it. Several investors instantly pulled out their phones, their faces pale with panic. Clara stood up, tears in her eyes, and pointed at the hallway. "She did the exact same thing to my husband. She ruined his business for 2 years, and she tried to do it again." I turned to look at Julian. This was the moment of truth. He was staring at the prenup on the table, then he looked at me. His face was a mixture of utter heartbreak and absolute fury. He didn't yell, he didn't defend his mother. Julian stood up, grabbed the freshly signed prenup, and ripped it directly in half. Then he ripped it again. He threw the pieces onto his dinner plate. Eleanor and Arthur rushed back into the room, drawn by the commotion. Eleanor's face was purple with rage. She marched toward me, pointing a shaking finger. "You little, stop," Julian said. His voice wasn't loud, but it was so cold it froze the entire room. He stepped entirely between me and his mother. "You lied to me," Julian said, staring down at the woman who raised him. "You told me this was about protecting our family. You tried to use my wedding my wife to commit a felony and cover up your own failures. You are disgusting," Eleanor gasped, clutching her pearls. "Julian, you don't understand the financial pressure." "I understand perfectly," Julian cut her off. He grabbed my hand, lacing his fingers through mine. "We are leaving. If you ever contact us again, I will personally hand this folder to the judge handling your lawsuit." We walked out of the penthouse together, leaving 40 people in complete chaos, and leaving Eleanor standing alone in the ruins of her own empire. Here is the aftermath. Arthur Vance officially resigned as the Sterling family's legal counsel from the parking lot that very night. He realized that if the concrete company's lawyers found out he had drafted a prenup specifically to hide assets, he would lose his license to practice law and face federal charges. He drafted a brand new, one-page prenup overnight that simply stated Julian and I kept total, separate control of our respective businesses forever. We signed it the next morning. We got married the following day. It was beautiful. Eleanor did not attend. She was formally uninvited by Julian, And she spent the day locked in her estate frantically doing damage control with her board of directors. 3 months later, the walls completely caved in on Sterling Enterprises. Because the investors at the dinner panicked, word spread rapidly. Apex Concrete successfully secured their prejudgment attachment, freezing Eleanor's accounts. To avoid total bankruptcy and a massive fraud investigation, Eleanor was forced by her own board of directors to step down as CEO. She lost complete control of the company her husband built. Clara, who had spent years being treated like garbage by her mother, was voted in by the board to take over the restructuring of the company. Clara is currently cleaning house, firing every toxic manager Eleanor ever hired, and she is doing a brilliant job. Julian and I are incredibly happy. My business is booming, completely untouched and entirely mine. Julian keeps that manila folder locked in the bottom drawer of his desk in his home office. He told me he keeps it as a daily reminder of exactly who in this world is truly looking out for him, and what happens when you underestimate a woman who built her life from a folding table. My grandpa saved $50,000 for my education, but my parents spent it on my sister's sweet 16 and a luxury trip. I, 25F, have been working at an architecture business for the past 2 years, and I need to discuss something that has been eating me alive. Familial favoritism. Not just slight biases, but overt, obvious favoritism that has influenced my entire life. Let me clarify. My parents treat my younger sister, Sophia, 18F, as if she is the center of the universe, while I might as well be invisible. Have you seen the memes about the golden child versus the scapegoat? That's my life, detailed in agonizing detail. Growing up, every birthday became a reminder of this reality. On my 16th birthday, I received a used laptop that could only run basic applications. Sophia's Sweet 16 celebration included a full venue rental, a live band, and even a professional photographer. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start at the beginning. I've always been drawn to architecture. Even as a child, I would spend hours with my construction blocks, constructing complicated structures as my parents admired Sophia's bizarre dancing movements in the living room. "Look how naturally talented she is," they'd exclaim, while my meticulously crafted structures were tossed aside without a glance. This pattern persisted through our lives. When I was in college, I took first prize in a major architectural design competition. It was a breakthrough moment in my career, the kind of triumph that leads to new opportunities. I alerted my parents about the awards event several weeks in advance, believing that this time would be different. My mother casually stated to me the morning before the ceremony that they would be unable to attend. "We have errands to run," she added, barely looking up from her phone, which was probably showing Sophia's most recent Instagram photos. I ended up asking my friend's mother to snap photos, holding back tears as I got my prize in front of a crowd of ecstatic parents. Sophia signed up for a high school dancing competition 3 months later. My parents were overjoyed when she came in second place, not first. They gave her flowers, took her out to a lavish supper, and documented everything on every social media outlet they could find. "Our talented daughter is following her dreams," they wrote. I sat at that supper, pushing food around my plate, wondering why her dreams were so much more valuable than mine. The instances are numerous. When my outdated phone eventually died, it was so old that the screen would randomly go black. I had to work additional shifts at my part-time job to save enough money for a replacement. Sophia expressed wanting the latest iPhone, and they got it for her that weekend. "She needs it for her social media presence," my mother said, as if that justified everything. But the true difference was in how they handled our mistakes. I once forgot to take out the garbage after working all night on a project. My father lectured me for 45 minutes about responsibility and how I needed to grow up and contribute to the home. But what happened when Sophia backed into our mailbox before she even had her license? They laughed it off. "Oh, everyone makes mistakes when they're learning." It cost $300 to replace the mailbox. My grandfather was not like others. He was my light of hope in this sea of favoritism. While my parents were preoccupied with Sophia's latest social media follower count, Grandpa would sit with me in his study and review my architectural sketches. He wasn't very knowledgeable about modern design ideas, but he understood passion. "One day," he said, his eyes gleaming, "I'll see your buildings on postcards, and I'll buy every single one of them." As I grew older, I spent more time at my grandparents' house. It was the only location where I could breathe freely and not have my accomplishments eclipsed by whatever Sophia had done that day. Grandma would bake cookies while Grandpa worked on my college applications. They were the first to actually notice me. When I was 22 and working my first job at an architecture firm, Grandpa summoned me for a serious chat. He brought me down in his study, the same space where he'd fostered my goals for years, and informed me that he was launching a college fund for my graduate education. He was painfully honest. "I know your parents won't prioritize this, sweetie. They have their favorites, and it's not fair. But I want you to have your shot. The money was large, totaling $55,000. It was enough to give me a legitimate opportunity to pursue my master's degree without drowning in debt. When my parents found out, they barely responded. What about Sophia? She had an amazing tantrum. Why doesn't Grandpa love me as much? She cried. My parents spent hours comforting her, assuring her she was just as important and adored. Meanwhile, I stood in the corner, convinced that I couldn't have this one item without it becoming about her. Working for an architecture firm has been my escape. I've pushed myself into my tasks, working late at the workplace and taking on extra responsibilities. My colleagues value my effort and attention to detail. Last month, I was even able to present one of my ideas to a significant client. The firm's partners were impressed. But when I sought to share this information with my parents, "That's nice, honey, but did you hear about Sophia's TikTok going viral?" Then everything changed. My grandparents died within months of one another. First Grandpa, then Grandma, as if they couldn't take being apart. Losing them devastated me. They were my support system, my cheerleaders, and the only people who treated me like I was important. In the midst of my sadness, I had to manage the duties they had left behind. They were highly structured, with everything clearly spelled out in their will. They left me their humble home, filled with memories and love. Then there was the college fund, Grandpa's pride and delight. I had not touched it yet, thanks to my work savings. But as graduate school applications approached, I decided to check the account. Late one night, after a particularly hard day at work, I went in to check the balance. The numbers on the screen caused my heart to stop. Instead of $55,000, there was just $5,000 remaining. I blinked. We refreshed the page, logged out and back in. The number did not change. The next morning, I went to the bank in person, trying to remain calm while I inquired about the transaction history. That's when the truth was revealed. My parents, named as secondary beneficiaries, had been steadily depleting the account for the past year. I called my mother that evening, my hands shaking as I gripped the phone. "Hey, I was checking Grandpa's college fund, and most of the money's gone. Do you know what happened?" There was a long delay before she spoke, her tone immediately defensive. "What do you mean it's gone? Are you sure you're looking at the right account?" When I told her I'd been to the bank and knew the money had been withdrawn, she abandoned the act. "We used it for Sophia's Sweet 16, she explained, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I felt like I had been hit in the stomach. "You spent $50,000 on a birthday party?" "It wasn't just the party," she said, as if that made things better. "There were a lot of expenses, the venue, the catering, the decorations. Plus, we got her a car." Then came the kicker. They had also used the money to take Sophia on a 2-week family trip to Europe. I wasn't even told about the family vacation, let alone invited. When I explained that the money was intended for my education, my mother sighed, as if I was being difficult. "You didn't need that money anymore. You have a job, remember? Sweet 16 only happens once." We wanted to make it special for her. I hung up the phone with my entire body numb. That night, I sat in the living room of the house my grandparents had left for me, surrounded by images and memories. It seemed like a betrayal of all they had worked for and believed in. After days of internal deliberation, I came to a decision. I hired an attorney. This is not about money anymore. It's about respect. About advocating for myself. Regarding respecting my grandparents' desires. When my parents received the documents, all hell broke out. My mother called within hours, shouting about how I was ripping the family apart. "Do you know how this makes us look?" she insisted. My reply was straightforward. "You should have thought about that before stealing $50,000. "It wasn't stealing," she exclaimed. "It was for the family." I advised her to contact my lawyer and hung up. The fallout was immediate. My extended family found out, of course, my mother couldn't keep it a secret, and I became public enemy number one. My aunt called to lecture me on family loyalty. My aunt told me, "You need to think about what you're doing to your mother." But I'm done thinking about everybody else. For once in my life, I'm thinking about myself. My lawyer thinks this will not be a simple process, but I am ready. My grandparents believed in me. I believed in my dreams. I refuse to let their final gift to me be spent on a Sweet 16 celebration and a car Sophia has probably already wrecked. I will keep you updated as things progress. If anyone has dealt with toxic family dynamics like this, I'd love to learn how they addressed it. Sometimes I question whether I'm doing the right thing. But then I remember my grandfather's expression when he told me about the college fund, and how delighted he was to be able to help me pursue my aspirations. I will not let them take it away. Update 1. Hi, Reddit. First and foremost, I'd like to express my gratitude for your responses to my last post. Some of you really helped me realize that sticking up for myself wasn't just okay, it was important. Here's what's transpired in the 2 months since I filed legal action. The legal proceedings have been exhausting. My parents first tried to drag things out by ignoring our letters and missed deadlines. Their initial answer, through their lawyer, was almost comical. They stated that the money was a family resource and that Grandpa had vocally changed his mind before dying. When we inquired for documentation of this alleged amendment, they couldn't recall exactly when or where the conversation took place. During our first mediation session, my parents took a different approach. Dad stated they had invested the money in my future, claiming Sophia's social media presence would someday benefit the entire family. He genuinely said, with a straight face, "She's going to be an influencer, and then she can help pay for your education." The mediator's look was priceless. The real shock occurred when we uncovered more withdrawals that they had not communicated. In addition to the Sweet 16 celebration, the car, and the European holiday, they had spent thousands of dollars on a private dance instructor to help Sophia advance her career. They'd paid for a costly social media marketing course, many professional photo sessions for her Instagram, and a full gaming setup for her aspiring streaming career. My lawyer was ecstatic with these discoveries. Apparently, tracking such needless expenses strengthens our case. When confronted with these expenses, my mother attempted to justify them as investments in Sophia's future. She even brought spreadsheets to our next meeting, hoping to demonstrate how an influencer career could provide a significant family income. The judge was unimpressed, especially when my lawyer showed out that Sophia's social media following was primarily acquired through paid marketing. Using more of my college fund money. The family dynamic has shifted. Most families initially supported my parents. However, as more information became available, some people began to shift their perspective. My cousin Julia, 32F, called me privately and said she'd seen similar partiality at family gatherings for years but never had the nerve to speak up. She's now one of my most ardent advocates, willing to testify about particular occurrences she's witnessed over the years. My Aunt Margaret, who had first lectured me on family loyalty, became strangely silent after seeing the bank statements. Mom had brought them to a family meeting with the intention of getting approval for their side of the tale, but it backfired catastrophically. The statements included not only the significant expenses, but also dozens of minor withdrawals for things like social media consultancy and brand building seminars. Last week, Margaret sent me a quick text. "Your grandpa would be proud of you standing up for yourself." Coming from her, it meant everything. Sophia's behavior has undergone the most dramatic changes. When she realized her automobile could be seized as part of the settlement, she launched a massive social media campaign against me. Her heartfelt claims about her nasty sister and how I was wrecking the family out of envy backfired swiftly. Her followers began to question her perspective, especially after she moaned about possibly losing her European summer holiday plans. Many of them had part-time jobs to pay for their textbooks. Her most recent outburst occurred when she realized she might need to obtain a job. She posted a 20-minute diatribe on how unfair it was that she might have to work in retail or food service like any other person. The comment section rapidly turned against her, with many pointing out how out of touch she seemed. She's losing followers on a regular basis, and her attempts to present herself as the victim have just exacerbated the situation. The actual wake-up call for her came last week, when she received her college admission letter. Instead of the customary festivities, there was panic throughout the house. My parents committed to pay for her entire education, but they are currently suffering major financial difficulties. Their savings have been exhausted due to legal bills and a potential settlement. Sophia's dream school is suddenly less guaranteed, and for the first time, she is confronted with the implications of their collective decisions. Meanwhile, my career has become my haven. My firm's partners have been really helpful, particularly after I informed them that I may want some flexibility for court dates. One of them approached me and related her own story of family financial abuse. She has become something of a mentor to me, guiding me through both professional and personal obstacles. Last month, she even assigned me to oversee a key project, indicating that she believes in my talents despite my ongoing personal troubles. The most reassuring event occurred during a heated phone conversation with my folks last week. My mother began her typical guilt trip about family loyalty, but this time, I found my voice. When she started talking about how families should help each other, I politely asked her, "Where was this concern for your family when you spent my education fund on Instagram photo shoots and social media courses?" The line became silent. Then she hung up. An hour later, my father called back with an entirely different tone. For the first time, he seemed dejected. Their lawyer phoned mine yesterday, saying we might be able to reach an agreement. The judge's first remarks regarding their breach of fiduciary duty appear to have finally struck home, particularly when he referenced potential punitive damages. My folks are beginning to understand that this will not go away with a few sad phone calls or guilt trips. The entire experience has been transformational. Standing up to them was daunting at first, but each small success has made me stronger. I am no longer the silent daughter who absorbs whatever attention they decide to offer me. I'm a professional lady battling for what is rightfully mine. And I'm winning. Not just in court, but in real life. Watching Sophia deal with real-world consequences has been eye-opening. She had to cancel her summer travel plans, and there is real talk that she will attend community college rather than her ideal university. She stopped writing about me on social media once her fans began to doubt her viewpoint. Some of her acquaintances have even contacted me personally, saying that my stance against family financial exploitation has helped them think about their own family problems. One of them even called me inspirational. Imagine the scapegoat daughter becoming an inspiration. The most recent development occurred when my parents attempted one more manipulation effort. They arrived at my office unannounced, believing they could press me in person. They didn't anticipate my entire squad to rally around me. My mentor stepped in, politely but firmly, ushering them out and telling them that any communication should go through our lawyers. It was fantastic to see their power over me dissolve in real time. I'll provide an update once we've reached an agreement or if anything significant changes. Thank you all for your encouragement and wisdom. Thank you to everyone who shared their own experiences with standing up to toxic family members. You helped me find my voice when I needed it the most. My grandfather used to say, sometimes the hardest battles are the ones most worth fighting. Update 2. After 6 months of intensive legal battles, I am finally able to reveal the outcome. For anyone curious about the outcome of the litigation, brace up, for karma has finally caught up with my family. The settlement negotiations were severe. My parents first claimed poverty, but their social media activities exposed them. Despite claiming financial distress, my mother continued to post about weekend spa getaways and fancy purchases. When my team submitted these posts to their lawyer during mediation, he visibly shuddered. Our forensic accountant made a surprising discovery, which marked a turning point. In addition to the expenses we already knew about, my parents had started depositing money into Sophia's social network investing account. They had recruited several influencer coaches and even put down a deposit on a content creation house, all using my college fund. The judge's response was noteworthy. This isn't investing in a child's future. This is gambling with someone else's inheritance. The final settlement exceeded our first expectations. My parents had to liquidate various assets, including their vacation timeshare and investment properties we had no idea existed. Sophia's car, the one they purchased with my money, had to be sold. What's with the irony? She had barely driven it and preferred to be ferried about by our parents. What about luxury shopping sprees and European vacations? Gone. She now works at a neighborhood coffee shop, which is her first actual job at the age of 18. The transformation has been astonishing. Initially, she returned home lamenting over having to wear a uniform and deal with tough customers. But something unexpected happened. She's genuinely maturing. She paid her first student loan payment last week and posted about it. There were no tears. There's no drama. Just a simple acknowledgement that she is learning to stand on her own 2 feet. My parents' changes have been even more dramatic. The illusion of a beautiful family life, which they had cultivated for years, has crumbled. My mother's social media accounts, which were formerly loaded with beautifully managed family images and uplifting words about unconditional love, have gone silent. Dad stopped making excuses for their actions and recently sent me an email, our first true conversation in months. In his email, he revealed something I never expected to hear. We failed you as parents. We got so caught up in making Sophia the star of our family that we forgot you were shining in your own way. He started having seen my name in an architectural magazine. I had recently won an award for an innovative ecological design project, and he stated he finally saw what my grandfather had always seen in me. My career provided the most rewarding growth opportunities. The sustainable design initiative that drew my father's interest has opened up great opportunities. 3 major corporations have approached me with job offers, and my current employer has reacted with a promotion and a significant raise. The partners even mentioned fast-tracking me for a junior partner position, which typically takes at least another 5 years. The compensation money has now arrived, and I have invested it just as my grandfather would have wished. I'll begin my master's degree in sustainable architecture next year, and I've set aside some money to establish a small scholarship for students in financial need. It feels good to transform this awful experience into something that can benefit others. Sophia and I had our first actual talk last week. She arrived at my house after her job at the coffee shop, still dressed in her uniform, looking fatigued but more sincere than I'd ever seen her. "I get it now," she remarked. "Why do you fight so hard?" It wasn't about the money. It was about being seen. We are not best friends, and perhaps we never will be. However, we have reached a new understanding. The most difficult thing has been witnessing my parents endure the community's censure. Their social circle has dwindled significantly since the truth was out. Several family friends have discreetly contacted me, relaying similar accounts of observing their favoritism over the years but never saying anything. My Aunt Margaret has unexpectedly become an ally, checking in on me on a regular basis and even assisting me with my graduate school application. Looking back, this journey was much more than just reclaiming stolen funds. It's been about breaking free from destructive familial patterns and discovering my own value. The house my grandparents left me has become my sanctuary, complete with architectural sketches and future ideas. I've converted their old study into my design studio, with my drafting table set up precisely where Grandpa used to sit and encourage my dreams. Sometimes, while I'm working late at night on my designs, I sense their presence and know they'd be proud of the lady I've become. The most significant difference has been in how I perceive myself. I am no longer the family's scapegoat or invisible daughter. I'm a successful architect, a potential graduate student, and someone who has the bravery to advocate for what is right. Last week, I presented a large sustainable housing project before the municipal council. Watching those seasoned architects and developers lean forward in their seats, truly interested in my ideas, was an experience that no amount of family approval could match. The familial dynamic that previously smothered me no longer has any hold on me. My folks are embarking on their own journey of atonement. Mom has started treatment, which she previously regarded as unnecessary. Her therapist assisted her in seeing tendencies from her own past that contributed to her bias. Dad is striving to re-establish relationships with family members who have distanced themselves owing to his enabling conduct. During our last family reunion, he actually stood up to his sister when she tried to make excuses for their previous actions. They have a long way to go, but at least they are admitting their mistakes. Sophia's transformation continues to amaze me. She's been promoted to shift supervisor at the coffee shop and is attending community college. Her social media presence now reflects a very different person, one who is discovering the importance of hard effort and genuine accomplishment. She's even created a small study club to help other working students reconcile work and education. Last week, she thanked me. "You taught me that real respect isn't about being given everything," she told me. "It's about earning your own way." The entitled youngster who used to throw tantrums over Instagram likes has matured into someone who recognizes the worth of actual achievement. To the Reddit community, your support has been vital throughout this trip. Every comment, letter, and shared story gave me the strength I needed when I was doubting myself. The reactions to my initial post made me realize how many other people have had similar issues with family financial abuse. You taught me that standing up for yourself does not make you selfish or ungrateful. Rather, it makes you powerful. Special thanks to everyone who shared their own experiences with family financial abuse and toxic dynamics. Your courage impressed me. When my grandfather established the college fund, he wanted to invest in my future. Ultimately, he offered me something far more significant than money. He taught me that I was worth fighting for. He showed me that dreams are more than simply wishful thinking. They are objectives that should be pursued with everything you have. That lesson has been worth every difficult moment on this path. For anyone out there dealing with similar family situations, remember, you deserve to be recognized, acknowledged, and your dreams taken seriously. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise, even if they are family. Sometimes the most difficult battles are fought against people who should have been your staunch supporters. But those struggles shape who you are. The legal victory was only the beginning. I've begun helping other young architects at my business, particularly those dealing with financial or family issues. It feels natural to pass on the kind of support that my grandfather offered me. Next month, I'll be speaking at a professional conference on sustainable urban development, which I would never have done before. As I prepare to begin my master's program, I carry my grandfather's comments near to heart. One day, I'll see your buildings on postcards. I may have lost the money once, but I gained something far more valuable, the courage to shape my own destiny on my own terms. Every blueprint I draw, every design I develop, is a reflection of his faith in me. Thank you, Reddit, for being a part of my quest to reclaim what was properly mine. Not just money, but also my self-worth. Your intervention has transformed a story of familial betrayal into one of personal victory. I hope that my story can inspire others to have the strength to stand up for themselves and their aspirations. My sister-in-law's DNA test was meant to expose me, but it ended up destroying her own marriage instead. I met my husband James, in our late 20s, and we soon fell in love. We married after 2 years of dating and have lived a wonderful, tranquil life ever since. Our friendship looked unshakable, based on trust and shared dreams. We celebrated the birth of our beautiful baby, Nathan. Now 5 years old, he brightens our days with laughter, love, and boundless enthusiasm. We felt like the perfect little family, and I believe nothing could separate us. That is, until Sarah, my sister-in-law, decided to put a wrench in everything. Sarah and I had never really gotten along. We had an underlying tension since James introduced us. I attempted to be friendly, but Sarah clearly had other plans. She accused me of trying to overshadow her by wearing a cream-colored dress to her wedding. This wasn't even my option. Sarah had specified that all of her bridesmaids wear cream. However, on her special day, it became about me taking the show. She launched a temper tantrum, turning what should have been a happy moment into an embarrassing one for everyone. From that moment on, it was a never-ending game of sarcastic remarks, backhanded compliments, and petty behavior. If I put on a new dress, Sarah would comment, "That's nice, but I liked it better when I saw it in the store last year." If Nathan reached a milestone, she would try to belittle it by comparing him to her own son, Tommy. It was exhausting, but James and I always chose the high path. We did not want family conflict to spoil our lives. Furthermore, we wanted Nathan and Tommy to grow up together, like siblings. However, things took a nasty turn this Christmas when Sarah sought to stir the pot in unexpected ways. For Christmas, she gave Nathan one of those DNA testing kits that everyone seems to be using nowadays. At first, I didn't think much about it. Nathan has always been interested in science and enjoys knowing about his family history. But something about Sarah's smug expression as she handed him the equipment didn't sit well with me. I had the impression that this present was more than just what it appeared to be. Later that evening, James grabbed me aside, his expression concerned. He claimed Sarah had made some unusual, almost cryptic remarks about eventually obtaining answers and how the truth always comes out. A shiver went down my spine. It wasn't hard to figure out what was going on. Nathan has green eyes, whereas James and I have brown ones. Of course, anyone with a basic understanding of genetics is aware that recessive features, such as green eyes, can pass down through generations. But Sarah had been making subtle, passive-aggressive statements for years, implying that James might not be Nathan's father. Sarah's present was a deliberate attempt to sow doubt in our marriage, causing James to question Nathan's parentage. I was infuriated. How dare she use something as innocent as a child's curiosity to play petty games? But James and I wouldn't let her win. We knew the truth. Our love and trust for each other were strong, and we weren't going to let Sarah's poisonous actions disrupt that foundation. We agreed to allow Nathan to take the test if he wanted to, knowing that the findings would only confirm what we already knew. Nathan is our son, and no test could change that. Nathan, utterly oblivious of the tension building beneath the surface, was enthusiastic about the science behind the DNA test. He was excited to learn about his ancestors and where they came from. So we assisted him in the procedure, and he mailed off the gear. Meanwhile, Sarah's son, Tommy, had been watching everything develop with great curiosity. Tommy, a curious 14-year-old, opted to take a DNA test as well. Sarah's husband, Todd, felt it would be a fun family activity, so they also ordered a kit for him. What began as harmless curiosity quickly turned into a family nightmare. Nathan's findings arrived a few weeks later, and as expected, everything was correct. James was his father, without a doubt. Then came the shock of a lifetime. Tommy's results revealed that Todd was not Tommy's biological father. The reality hit hard. Sarah had an affair over a decade ago, and Tommy was not Todd's child. The discovery shattered the family like a wrecking ball. Todd was devastated. He had reared Tommy as his own, never thinking Sarah was unfaithful. To make matters worse, Todd sought a paternity test for their 7-year-old daughter. The results confirmed his greatest fears. He wasn't her father either. Sarah's entire life, the immaculate picture she had fought so hard to maintain, was disintegrating right in front of her eyes. And this wasn't a quiet, secret disintegration. The entire family was aware, and the consequences were negative. Todd filed for divorce and left their home within a few days. Sarah's world fell, and the once smug lady who had attempted to destroy my family now stood in the ruins of her own. The irony of the situation could not be ignored. Sarah's attempt to pull apart my marriage had simply exposed her own lies. Tommy was struck the hardest. He transitioned from a carefree, joyful youngster to a confused and heartbroken young adult. The man he had always called dad was not his father, and his family was disintegrating. Nathan, too, was impacted. He and Tommy had always been close, and watching his cousin go through such upheaval made him sad and scared. He began questioning why Tommy's father was no longer around, and it hurt my heart to watch him so concerned about his cousin. Sarah's life became increasingly chaotic as time went. Todd pressed for full custody of their children, seeking to limit Sarah's role in their lives. Sarah, who had always been the glue that held the family together with her domineering personality, now appeared to be a shell of her former self. At family gatherings, she was a nervous wreck, her face pale and her eyes red from sobbing. The woman who had before attempted to make my life miserable now appeared completely defeated. Then, one day, something unexpected occurred. Sarah reached out to me. She called me, her voice unsteady and teary, pleading for assistance. She wanted me to talk to Todd and persuade him to lighten off on the custody agreement. She was anxious to salvage what little she had left of her relationship with her children, and she was seeking assistance from me. At first, I was stunned. After everything she had done to undermine my marriage and cause havoc at every opportunity, she had the arrogance to ask for my assistance. I initially ignored her calls, refusing to consider aiding her. But as the days passed, I found myself wondering about Tommy. He was the true victim in all of this. Despite the fact that none of this was his fault, he bore the brunt of it. Nathan, too, was trying to figure out why his cousin's life had been turned upside down. I started feeling conflicted. Was it appropriate to hold Sarah's conduct against her children? Should I put my rage aside and help for the benefit of the kids? James, of course, warned me to keep out of it. He insisted Sarah had made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. But I couldn't ignore the idea that I might be able to assist bring some serenity to the children involved. It was not their fault that their mother made poor decisions. So I found myself at a crossroads, unsure what to do. Should I assist Sarah, or should I let her face the consequences of her own actions? And now here I am, caught between doing what is right for the children and staying away from the woman who caused so much misery. What would you do if you were in my position? Update 1. Hello, everybody. Thank you for taking time to read my story. I did not expect such a large response, and your help has meant a lot to me during this tough time. It's been really difficult to navigate the emotional roller coaster I'm now experiencing, but knowing that there are others out there who understand and care has been quite beneficial. I wanted to provide an update on what has occurred since my previous post, and I hope it puts some light on the complex situation we are dealing with. Sarah is still contacting me regularly, and to be honest, it's getting tiring. I expected her to back off or cool down, but she hasn't. She is relentless. On one especially horrible day, she called me 3 times in a row, leaving lengthy, sobbing voicemails. I could sense the desperation in her voice, but after everything, it was difficult to feel sympathy. At one point, my husband James became so frustrated that he couldn't take it anymore. He called her himself. James rarely loses his cool, so when he phoned her, I knew he was serious. I could hear his wrath from across the room. He exploded, telling her he was fed up with her disrespecting me and attempting to manipulate our family. He made it apparent that this was more than simply a DNA test. It was about years of snarky remarks, manipulation, and her blatant disrespect for limits. Sarah did not take it well. She burst into tears on the phone, telling James that I had poisoned his mind against her, that I was the one who was keeping him away from his family. Hearing her sob like that made me conflicted. I felt a glimmer of sympathy, but basically, I was tired. After that chat, things became worse. Sarah's tone changed again. She began contacting me regularly, alternating between asking for help and accusing me of attempting to ruin her life. She was pleading for my aid at one point, claiming she wanted me to talk to Todd and help things go well. The next thing I knew, she was calling me manipulative, alleging I was jealous of her and her family, and that I wanted to end her marriage. It was as if she wasn't sure if I was her enemy or her rescuer. Honestly, coping with her emotional outbursts has been draining. I feel like I'm locked on a roller coaster that I didn't sign up for. Throughout all, my main focus has been the children. They are innocent in all of this, but they are the ones suffering the most. I can't quit thinking about Tommy and Nathan. Tommy's discovery about his biological father must have been traumatic for him, and it's evident that he's having difficulty processing it. It's difficult for me to see him suffer through this without being able to help. Nathan, on the other hand, isn't really sure what's going on, but he senses something wrong. We attended a family gathering a few days ago, and Nathan wanted to play with Tommy like they used to do. They used to be really close, almost inseparable. But when Tommy came over, I noticed an immediate shift in him. He was distant, reserved, and rarely engaged with Nathan. My heart bled as I saw the two boys, who had previously been like brothers, drift apart. Nathan continued asking why Tommy wasn't laughing or playing like he used to, but I didn't have the heart to tell him the truth. Instead, I made up reasons, telling him Tommy was simply sleepy or had a lot on his mind. But I knew it was more than that. Meanwhile, Sarah keeps sending me lengthy, dramatic texts. She wrote me a note yesterday, claiming she felt betrayed by our family. I really wanted to yell. How could she feel betrayed? She was the one who made these decisions. She was the one who caused the situation. And yet, she refuses to accept responsibility. It's always someone else's fault. Mine, James's, Todd's, never hers. James and I have had numerous late-night discussions on how to approach this. We both want to do what is best for the children, but we don't know what that is anymore. James says we should intervene and try to help Tommy, especially because he and Nathan are close. However, he is also concerned about the ramifications of being too involved in Sarah's situation. We've been trying to strike a balance between being supportive of the kids and maintaining our personal peace, but it's been more difficult than we expected. Todd has begun to contact James, further complicating matters. He's been trying to make sense of things and wants to discuss the problem. James hesitantly agreed to join him for coffee. When he returned, he appeared more conflicted than ever. Todd is naturally devastated. He told James that he believes his entire life has been a lie, and that he is now struggling to figure out how to co-parent with Sarah in light of everything that has occurred. Talking with Todd simply made James feel more torn. Todd is a kind guy who is only trying to do the best he can for his children despite the nightmare he has found himself in. After hearing Todd's side of the story, James is even more divided about how to proceed. He wants to help, but we both know that being too involved will drag us deeper into Sarah's drama. It's difficult to know what the appropriate thing to do. Every time I see Tommy, I have an intense want to help him. He's just a child caught up in this calamity, and he doesn't deserve any of it. Nathan continues asking why Tommy appears so sad all the time, and it aches my heart that I can't give him an honest reason. The more I think about it, the more split I am. Between wanting to intervene and being terrified of being drawn into Sarah's tumultuous world. At the end of the day, all I want to do is safeguard the children. Tommy and Nathan deserve more, and it's sad to see them suffer as a result of their parents' sins. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm hoping we can find a way to resolve this without causing further harm. I'll keep you posted on what happens next, and once again, thank you for your continuing support. Update 2. Hello folks. A lot has transpired in the last few days, so buckle up. It's been a lot for all of us, and I'm not sure how much longer this will continue. But this is where we are now. First and foremost, Sarah chose to proceed with an official medical paternity test. She was dissatisfied with the results of the at-home DNA kit, arguing it was not a reputable source for making such an important decision. To be fair, the at-home tests include a margin of error, and I'm guessing she was hanging on to whatever hope she had left. But, guess what? The findings did not change. The medical paternity test confirmed what the first one had revealed. Todd is not the father of Tommy or their daughter. Sarah just created a deeper hole for herself. I was not surprised by the conclusion, but there was no space for uncertainty. Todd, in particular, appeared to be preparing for the worst-case scenario. But when the medical test results came back, I could tell it still wounded him terribly. He appeared shattered, as if the last shred of hope he clung to had been taken away. He had previously told James that he did not expect a miracle, but there was always a glimmer of hope that the test had been incorrect. Seeing the confirmation in black and white felt like the last nail in the coffin. Todd grew even more withdrawn after receiving the news. I saw it coming, but I wasn't expecting what occurred next. Todd apparently did some research after receiving the results and tracked out the man with whom he suspected Sarah was having an affair. Todd told James that this guy was Sarah's coworker for more than a decade ago. Todd had misgivings about their connection for a long time, but Sarah always dismissed them as work issues. Todd now understood what was going on. He recalled Sarah and this man being extremely close, attending work parties together and messaging late into the night. She was always making excuses to Todd, convincing him that everything was fine. However, it appeared that all of those suspicions were coming true. Todd decided to confront the person. He traced him down to his home and went there without informing anyone. Todd wasn't in a good mood, as far as I could tell. He was hurt, angry, and desperate for an answer. Things moved swiftly. Todd wasn't having it, even if the guy initially disputed everything. It immediately escalated into a yelling confrontation, and it wasn't long before things became physical. Neighbors heard the disturbance and phoned the police. By the time the cops arrived, Todd and the other man had been beaten badly. Todd was arrested for assault, and he now faces prosecution. It's a mess. James had to go down to the police station to help Todd. He bailed him out, but Todd now faces major legal consequences. He's claiming that the fight was provoked, but it will be difficult to prove in court. The whole thing is spiraling out of control, and I can't help but wonder if it's all because Sarah chose to hide the truth for so long. Todd is disintegrating, and it's awful to see someone who was always so composed fall apart. Meanwhile, Sarah has been scrambling to contain the damage, but it's much too late. Todd has now filed for full custody of the children, citing the affair, paternity testing, and fight as proof that Sarah is an unsuitable mother. Sarah is in a panic. She's trying to persuade everyone that Todd is the problem, labeling him a psychomaniac and citing the fight as proof that he's unstable and dangerous. She's frightened that Todd will take the kids away from her, so she's lashing out at everybody who disagrees with her. The tension between Sarah and Todd is growing by the day. Todd is furious with her for years of deceit, and Sarah is anxious to keep some control over her life, which is disintegrating around her. I can see the toll it's having on both of them, but I'm most concerned about Tommy and their daughter. Todd has been talking about moving out of state with the kids to put some distance between them and Sarah. He believes that the children deserve a fresh start away from the tumult. But I am not sure. I appreciate his desire to protect kids, but removing them from everything they've known could be more harmful than beneficial. And legally, it will be a difficult battle. Sarah, as always, is in complete meltdown mode. She's been contacting me constantly, alternating between pleading for my assistance and accusing me of turning James against her. Dealing with her mood swings is extremely demanding. One minute, she's pleading for help, claiming she's been wronged. The next moment, she's shouting about how James and I are involved in some vast conspiracy against her. I wish I didn't feel sympathy for her, but a part of me does. She is certainly spinning. But, at the same time, I can't deny that she brought it all on herself. It's difficult to watch someone self-destruct, especially when they refuse to accept responsibility for their actions. When I last saw Sarah, she looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her eyes were red and puffy, and she kept saying how everything was falling apart, and how Todd was attempting to take her children away. She denies that her own actions are to blame for this situation. She still perceives herself as the victim in all of this, which makes it difficult to communicate with her. She's attempting to transfer all of the blame to Todd, but anyone who has been paying attention can see that the situation is far more complicated than that. At this point, I don't believe we have any choice except to get engaged. We are already knee-deep in this mess, whether we like it or not. James believes we should help Todd deal with the legal troubles he is experiencing, especially since Todd appears to be the more stable father in this situation. But I'm concerned about how this is affecting the children. They're caught in the middle of a conflict they didn't ask for, and I'm frightened that they'll be the ones who suffer the most in the end. Tommy, especially, appears to be struggling. He's always been a sensitive child, but I've observed a shift in him since all of this began. He's quieter, more withdrawn, and clearly perplexed about what's going on. I can't imagine how it must feel to learn that the man you've always called dad isn't your own father. Nathan has asked me several times why Tommy doesn't want to play as much anymore, and each time it crushes my heart. I'm not sure how to explain it to him in a way that he will understand. The situation is spiraling out of control, and I have no idea how it will end. Every time I think it can't be any worse, something new happens, dragging us all deeper into the insanity. We're simply trying to take things one day at a time and hope for the best. But it's difficult to be hopeful when the future appears so uncertain. I'll keep you all posted as things go, but for the time being, we're simply holding on and hoping for a resolution that won't absolutely destroy these kids' lives. Update 3. Hello, everyone. It is time for the final update. A lot has transpired since my last post, and I believe things are finally starting to settle. We're not totally out of the woods yet, despite the roller coaster ride we've had. But it appears that the worst is behind us. I've been contemplating everything, and I wanted to express how things have progressed. First, let us discuss Todd and the man Sarah had an affair with. You're all aware that Todd was detained after the confrontation became physical. What I didn't mention earlier is that the issue worsened even further. Initially, we believed Todd would face substantial charges for the incident. However, in an unexpected change of events, the guy chose not to press charges. Todd told us that this man wants to disassociate himself from the whole affair. He was probably aware that his engagement may make matters worse for him, both personally and professionally. While he admitted to the affair when the police arrived, he has now severed relations with both Todd and Sarah. In some ways, that chapter of the story has come to an end, and to be honest, I believe it is for the better. Todd does not need to continue battling with someone who clearly has no regard for the consequences of his actions. Now, the bit regarding the kids has been the most emotionally draining for everyone. Todd had initially applied for full custody of Tommy and his younger sister, which understandably caused Sarah to panic. Todd, however, had a breakthrough following some difficult meetings with his lawyer and some profound thought. He recognized that no matter what the paternity test showed, Tommy and his sister were still his children. He has been their father since birth, nurturing, loving, and guiding them. That relationship cannot be severed with a DNA test. Todd informed James and me that he is no longer fighting for custody out of anger or vengeance. Instead, he is doing it to protect the children from the upheaval Sarah has caused. He is desperate to protect them from the consequences of her conduct, and he has been absolutely amazing throughout. It's evident how much he adores those children, and that has been his primary emphasis in everything. He has made it a point to remind them that whatever happens between him and Sarah, they will always be his children. He loves them unconditionally and isn't going away. Todd's handling of the chat with the children was exceptional. He sat them down and described the problem in an age-appropriate manner, not giving them too much information, but just enough to understand why things were changing. He told them that they had done nothing wrong and that this was not their fault. Tommy, in particular, has struggled to digest everything. I believe Todd's assurance that he is still Tommy's father, no matter what, helped to alleviate some of his bewilderment and anguish. Tommy is still struggling, but he isn't as lost as previously. Sarah, on the other hand, has been an absolute wreck. She's still in full panic mode, urgently attempting to save her relationship with the children. But she's not doing it the right way. Instead of focusing on their emotional needs, she has been preoccupied with her own issues, such as managing her public image and cleaning up the mess she caused. Meanwhile, Todd has been attending their school events, driving them to doctor's appointments, and ensuring their well-being. It's terrible to see, but Sarah seems more concerned with how things appear on the outside than what's going on inside her family. The custody battle is still underway, but Todd has shifted his strategy. He is now advocating for shared custody rather than full custody, recognizing that the children still need their mother in their life, despite everything. Todd is attempting to be the bigger person here, acknowledging that, as damaging as Sarah's actions have been, the children should not lose their relationship with her entirely. Nonetheless, Todd continues to advocate for primary custody because he has been the more stable father throughout. He wants to provide the children a sense of stability and normalcy, which they have been missing for a long time. Based on what we've heard, the court appears to be siding with Todd. He has proved that he is the one who provides stability for the children, and his love for them is obvious. Unfortunately, Sarah is not helping her own cause. She's still making everything about her, portraying herself as the victim and citing Todd's previous outburst as proof that he's unfit. But everyone involved understands Todd's outburst was motivated by hurt, and he's been doing everything he can to move on in a healthy way. Sarah and Todd's marriage is over. The divorce is underway, and there is no going back. Todd is now at peace with this. He's told James and me that he's no longer furious at Sarah, just sad. It's sad to think about what could have been. I'm sorry their relationship ended the way it did. It is unfortunate that it has had such an influence on the children. But he is also focused on going forward. Todd's top priority right now is his children, and he's doing everything he can to be the best father possible. James and I are doing well despite all of this. It's been difficult to see everything unfold, but we've tried to be supportive without becoming overly involved in the drama. Nathan and Tommy remain as close as ever, and we've been making sure the boys spend time together to assist Tommy cope. I think it's been beneficial for both of them to have that connection, especially because everything else feels so unstable. One thing I've learned from all of this is how resilient children can be when surrounded by love. Despite the tumult, Todd's love for his children has served as a stabilizing force, keeping them on track. We've all tried to help, but in the end, Todd's strength and determination will see them through this. I'd also like to take a moment to thank everyone for their tremendous support. I never dreamed that a DNA test would change my life so dramatically, but here we are. Your wisdom, good words, and support have helped me more than I can express. Navigating this scenario has been difficult at times, but knowing that there are others who care and understand has made all the difference. I'm hoping that this will be the final significant update I need to provide. Things are still in motion, but I am hopeful that the worst is behind us. The kids are still surrounded by affection, which is ultimately what matters. Thank you again for staying with me on this trip. Let's hope the next chapter is one of healing and harmony. My parents funded my sister's lavish wedding, then handed me the bill. They never expected what I'd do next. I, 32M, was my parents' first kid. They own a healthcare firm and were both highly involved, so I was effectively parentless throughout my youth. I had few intimate moments with them and was always in the care of my nannies. My parents, still in their prime, opted not to bear the responsibility of parenting. They lived a luxury lifestyle, frequently spending over their means, but because they each had sizable inheritances as a safety net, they always landed securely, despite their spendthrift tendencies. My parents had a daughter, Emma, 8 years after my birth. With Emma's arrival, I realized that their neglect of me was not due to their busy lifestyle, but because they just did not like me enough to spend time with me. Over the years, I discovered numerous causes for this treatment. I was a normal-looking child with average intelligence, an introvert who only spoke when spoken to. Emma, on the other hand, was just what my parents needed to position themselves as a perfect family, in their professional circles. She was a stunning baby with blue eyes and curly golden hair. She had inherited my parents' greatest qualities, and even as a youngster, she could fascinate a small crowd with her antics. Her presence solidified the perfect family picture that my parents desired to project. Emma had special treatment, but this did not imply that I had a difficult existence. I was fortunate enough to attend an expensive private school and then a prestigious university. However, the male treatment I experienced throughout my upbringing taught me the value of working hard and earning respect. I worked tirelessly in school and university to earn a well-paying position. Once I secured a job, I worked hard to go up the professional ladder as rapidly as possible. Despite maintaining communication with my parents, the wounds of childhood maltreatment never healed. Emma, as the golden child, was never expected by our parents to work hard. She was an ordinary student to begin with, and because our parents indulged her, she constantly failed her studies. She dropped out of high school, but our parents continued to employ her at their business. Even yet, she was absent most days, and when she did show up, she stayed for only a few hours. She had disagreements with all of her coworkers, and they loathed her presence in the office. Friends and family frequently told me about Emma's temper tantrums and the drama that ensued. However, it devastated my heart how my parents kept this from me. During a visit to my parents after I had established my career, I expected to have a serious conversation with Emma on their behalf. I believed a family intervention would benefit her professional life. When I arrived, Emma was nowhere to be found, and my parents made me feel foolish by stating she ran half of their firm. I could tell my parents were gently comparing my accomplishments to Emma's. That's when it hit me. My parents saw me as the child that grew up without their meddling, whereas Emma was the one they reared with their guidance. It would have been a shame for my parents if I had achieved more in life than Emma. At 19, I was already succeeding in university, whilst my sister, who was the same age, was out partying. Nothing changed throughout the years. Emma remained to live with our parents while I grew in my job. My relationship with Emma deteriorated during these years, for reasons I did not fully understand. As her older brother, I attempted to comprehend what she was going through. Everyone except our parents contrasted her life to mine. She was continually told to follow in my footsteps and achieve success, but that was not her goal. These parallels compelled our parents to overcompensate by giving her undeserved advancements in their company and giving in to all of her demands. My sister was growing up without the ability to accept responsibility for anything, which concerned me. However, I had no role in her life to intervene and advise her. My parents had already kicked me out of their lives since I outshone Emma at parties and family gatherings. Emma preferred it this way, so I established my own social group in the city where I lived. 2 years ago, I met my wife, Danielle. Danielle worked in the fashion sector, something I never envisioned myself being involved with. I had the worst fashion sense, and I still don't understand how a woman with such refined taste in fashion fell in love with me. Her presence in my life enhanced how I portrayed myself, improving my confidence. Strangely, the emptiness left by my parents, which had persisted since my early youth, has finally been filled. Danielle's presence in my life allowed me to discover aspects of my personality that I was previously unaware of. So it's not an exaggeration to state that she's the best thing that's ever happened to me. After a year of dating, Danielle and I decided to marry. Because we both had a limited circle of close friends and family, we chose to have a lavish ceremony. We planned a destination wedding and, after much study, debate, and discussion, chose Venice as our site. I won't go into detail about the wedding, but we paid for all of our invited guests' travel fees and hosted them in the best possible hotels. Most of our guests had never experienced a ceremony like this before. Emma urged me to purchase a ticket for her boyfriend as well, which I joyfully agreed to, despite Danielle's advice to hesitate. Throughout the wedding, I detected jealousy in Emma's eyes. She was frequently consoled by our mother. My parents were in awe of the wedding I had planned, but they kept their joy to themselves. Even before the wedding, my family had ignored my attempts to arrange a family dinner with Danielle. They maintained this conduct even after the wedding. After a while, I gave up trying. Around the same time, I realized that my parents were bad-mouthing me to those around them. They informed others that I had taken their money to finish my studies and find a career, just to abandon them in their old age. My father even stated that he would not leave me a dime of his fortune. My aunt on my father's side, who has always supported me, was nice enough to warn me about what was going on at home. It would be a lie to claim that it did not hurt me. Losing a family member is a difficult experience, and Danielle helped me get through it. I learned a few months back that my sister was arranging her wedding. My aunt told me that Emma was blown away by my wedding and wanted something similar for herself. She even convinced her fiancé to propose to her and began organizing a lavish wedding in Tuscany. However, neither she nor her lover had any money. So she approached our parents and requested them to pay for her wedding. To no one's surprise, they cheerfully approved her request. However, they could not afford a wedding in Tuscany. So they requested her to change the location to Hawaii. After considerable opposition, my sister gave in and planned an elaborate wedding there. Throughout the preparation process, neither my parents nor my sister wanted to involve me in any way. I even met them once during this time, but they kept quiet about the wedding plans. So I accepted the fact that I wouldn't be invited to my sister's wedding. My parents surprised me a few weeks ago when they invited Danielle and me to supper at their house. This was the first time they had asked Danielle around, so my unsophisticated mind assumed this was the first step toward repairing my connection with them. The dinner was good, but afterward, my folks dropped a bombshell. They informed me that they had incurred significant business losses and that an anticipated litigation loomed over their heads like the sword of Damocles. They could no longer afford my sister's wedding. They also couldn't let their golden child down. So they invited me over to see if I could help fund the expense of her wedding. The dinner was not an attempt to reconcile our differences. Rather, it was an opportunity for them to utilize me to make their favorite child happy. I was enraged on the inside, but without asking Danielle, I accepted their offer. However, I had two conditions. First and foremost, I wanted complete control over the wedding style. Second, I wanted to give a speech at the wedding. They were startled because I wasn't normally the one to offer speeches. They didn't care as long as I helped them maintain the prestige of their favored child. Emma's wedding was far more crowded than my own. In addition to her acquaintances, family members from both sides of our parents' families were invited. This was an excellent opportunity to express myself, which is why I insisted on giving a speech. The wedding day eventually arrived, and I could tell Emma was unsatisfied with the arrangements I had made. We had extremely different interests, and I knew that whatever I selected, she would find a way to perceive it as a bad decision. But I was there for one reason: to deliver my speech. When the time came, I asked Danielle to videotape it. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, "I want to take a moment to thank my parents for giving me the opportunity to speak today." My parents exchanged confused looks. They had expected me to speak about Emma, not them. "You see, for years, my parents have ignored me," I went on. "They never supported me or treated me with the same love and affection that they did my sister. But now that they need anything from me, they creep back." As my remarks took effect, the room fell silent. My parents looked uncomfortable, and Emma appeared to be about to cry. "But I'm not bitter," I added, smiling. "In fact, I am grateful. You see, this wedding has given me the opportunity to demonstrate to my parents my success and accomplishments, and I must admit, it feels quite wonderful." I went on to give a speech about how my parents treated me differently and how, despite all of my successes and accomplishments, it still hurts me. My parents sat quietly, their faces flushed with embarrassment. As I finished my speech, I approached my sister and hugged her. "I'm so happy for you," I said truly. "I hope you have a wonderful life with your husband." And with that, I left the reception with my wife, leaving my parents and sister behind. I drove back to my hotel room and sat here, satisfied. My parents have always portrayed themselves as the ideal parents, and this is a significant part of their reputation in our town. I'm glad I finally had the chance to tell everyone how I was genuinely handled. However, I feel a little awful about doing it during my sister's wedding. Am I the a-hole for destroying my sister's wedding day by giving a speech on my parents' carelessness since childhood? Update 1. Emma entered my room shortly before midnight and hugged me tightly. She was crying, and I sobbed with her. Danielle moved out of the room to provide us some solitude. Emma told me she had never heard my side of the tale. She had always assumed that I remained aloof from my family because I desired to be. Our parents had made sarcastic remarks about me to her since she was a child, creating a terrible image of me in her mind. I apologize for ruining her wedding day. To my amazement, she was incredibly understanding, even saying that our parents deserved it. This is the most heartfelt talk I've had with my sister since she was born. Update 2. 1 week has passed. I had not met my father or mother before leaving Hawaii, but my mother called me today. She informed me that Emma had ceased speaking to my father. My speech made a significant impression on her, but my father viewed it confrontational and disrespectful. He chose to cut all relations with me. Emma ceased talking to him after she discovered the truth. My mother begged me to act in some way because the situation was causing her distress. Update 3: Yesterday I did something inconceivable. I invited all of the family members to supper and let them discuss their differences. After feeling orphaned and lost for the previous 32 years, I suddenly feel like I'm leading a family. During supper, I discussed my differences with my dad. Though he was too stubborn to accept his shortcomings, I knew he recognized that he had not been a good parent to me. My mother apologized for not being present for me as a mother. I did not turn out badly, so there was no reason not to forgive her. By the end of the evening, I had ensured that the conflicts between my sister and my father were settled. It is odd to be involved in family matters, but my only concern is whether this will continue or not. Comment: Ash, your family is a bunch of rich a-holes who have been making money for generations and have no idea what to do with it. What's wrong with being raised by nannies when kids are abandoned on the streets? You were loved and cared for as a youngster, which is why you grew up to be successful and can now afford 2 expensive weddings consecutively. NTA, but you might have done this sooner rather than being a doormat for so many years, hoping your family would learn from their mistakes and begin loving you properly. You should also learn to communicate more effectively rather than waiting until the last minute to explode. I suspected my wife was planning a divorce, so I moved my assets. 2 weeks later, she filed, then backtracked when her plan backfired. Hello everyone, before we start today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thank you very much. Now, let's begin the video. Hello people. I've been skimming through the posts here for a while, believing I'd never have my own tale to tell. However, life has a way of shocking you, and I've been lugging this about for months. I need to let it out. Let me be clear, I've never been the sort to jump to conclusions or assume the worst. My wife, let's call her M, and I have been together for 6 years and married for 4. Things were solid, or so I thought. We experienced the typical ups and downs, but nothing that made me think, oh, there's a problem here. In reality, throughout the majority of our relationship, we were that couple, completely committed colleagues. We laughed at stupid inside jokes, argued for hours about which movie to watch, and had a cadence that just worked. She'd organize elaborate date nights, and I'd treat her to her favorite takeout after a long day. It felt effortless. As if we had figured out the whole love thing. That is why what occurred next struck me like a ton of bricks. The shift around 6 months ago, things began to alter. At first, it was minor details. Things you'd likely miss if you weren't paying attention. She began carrying her phone everywhere, even when she was only going to the kitchen or folding clothes. Before this, her phone would sit on the coffee table for hours, and she didn't mind who picked it up. One day I made this joke. "What, are you running some secret spy ring now?" She chuckled and added, "No, work's been emailing me a lot." Okay, fine. But, a few days later, she created a password. That one caught me off surprise because she had never used it before. When I casually inquired why, she responded something vague about security and hackers. I didn't press it since I didn't want to appear paranoid, but it simply felt off. And it did not end there. She began taking calls outside the room, which she had never done before. It wasn't subtle either. Her phone would ring, and she'd say, "Oh, let me just grab this real quick," before disappearing into the bedroom or outside on the porch. If I inquired who it was, she would just say, "Just a friend from work." Then I noticed a new habit. Keeping her phone face down on the table. I had no idea that was a thing until I reached over to give her something and she hastily moved her phone out of the way. It was one of those blink and you miss it moments, yet it stayed with me. Growing distance. However, it wasn't all about the phone. She started to feel distant. Conversations that used to flow easily now felt like pulling teeth. If I brought up future plans, such as where should we go for our anniversary? Or, do you think we should start saving for a new car? She'd simply nod and say, "Yeah, we'll see," before shifting the subject. It all came together for me on a random Wednesday. She informed me that she was seeing a buddy for coffee after work. It didn't sound strange, she does that occasionally. I happened to be running errands in the same area, so I figured, why not surprise her? It will be cute. When I arrived, however, she was not with her friend. She stood outside the cafe, Walking back and forth, her phone placed against her ear. I remained in my car because something about the way she spoke seemed serious. I didn't intend to eavesdrop, but I overheard phrases like, "It's almost ready," and "starting fresh soon." My stomach sank. I couldn't figure out what she was saying, but it didn't sound like job or friend conflict. It sounded grander, like something she had planned. When she returned home, I asked her how her coffee date went, attempting to maintain a casual tone. She told me a complete narrative about her pal complaining about her boyfriend. It was such an unexpected comment that I just gazed at her for a second. "What do you mean?" I inquired. She shrugged. "I just think we should have everything in one place. You know, like all our account info, passwords, documents, that kind of thing, just in case of emergency." I wasn't sure what to say. This was something we'd never discussed before, and the timing seemed strange given everything else I'd noticed. "What kind of emergencies?" I inquired, attempting to keep my tone casual. She shrugged again. "It's just smart, isn't it? What if something happens to one of us? Or what if we need to make a big financial decision quickly?" Her argument made sense on the surface, but something about the way she expressed it made me nervous. It was too rehearsed and polished, as if she had been waiting for the appropriate time to bring it up. I nodded and murmured something like, "Yeah, I guess that's a good idea," but within, alarms were ringing. Why now? Why are we suddenly concerned about arranging our finances when we've always kept them separate and loose? That night, my mind kept reliving her words, attempting to figure out what it meant. Was this just typical adult behavior, and was I reading too much into it? But then I remembered the phone calls, the talk I overheard in the cafe, and how distant she'd been recently. It all began to mount up, and I did not like the image it was painting. Until then, I had done nothing about it. A few days later, she mentioned it again. We were in the kitchen. I was making a sandwich, and she was looking through her phone, when she remarked, "Have you thought more about organizing the bank stuff? Like, do you know where all the account details are?" I lowered the knife and turned to face her. "Okay, what's going on?" I inquired, attempting to keep my tone light but firm. "You've been bringing up the finances a lot lately. Is there something we need to talk about?" She finally looked up from her phone, astonished that I had pressed her on it. "No, nothing's wrong," she responded hastily, making me giggle. "I just think it's important, that's all, you know, for emergencies." "Emergencies? Like what?" She shrugged, her expression unreadable. "I don't know. Just life stuff. It's not a big deal. I promise, I just think it's something we should get on top of." Her response seemed ambiguous. Too vague. I nodded and let it go, but the way she avoided providing a direct answer made me even more suspicious. It didn't seem like a casual suggestion anymore. It felt like she was concealing something, but I had no idea what it was. So, the next day, while she was at work, I decided to look into our finances. I opened our joint account online and discovered something unexpected. Over the last month, a few tiny moves had taken place. Nothing large, but small quantities that did not appear to have a clear purpose. They were not designated for bills, groceries, or anything similar. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but it appeared that she had been withdrawing money from the account for some reason, which I couldn't figure out. I considered addressing her, but something told me to wait. If I was wrong, I'd look ridiculous. And if I was correct, I had to be careful. It was eating at me, so I contacted someone I trusted, an old college friend who also happens to be a lawyer. I told him what I'd discovered while trying not to sound like a conspiracy theorist. "Look," he remarked after I'd explained everything. "I'm not saying something is absolutely going on, but you're not insane for wanting to be ready. If you're concerned about protecting your assets, now is the moment to do so. Better safe than sorry." He walked me through what I could do, simple procedures to ensure my finances were protected if something happened. I'll admit that taking such drastic action felt out of the ordinary. It felt like I was preparing for something dreadful even though I wasn't sure what was wrong. But the more I considered it, the more it made sense. If she was really up to something, and I was beginning to suspect she was, I needed to defend myself. It was not an easy decision to make, however. This wasn't just about money or assets. It was about the life we had created together. I kept repeating images in my head, our wedding day, the late-night conversations about our dreams, and the weird little jokes we shared. How did we arrive here? Is this what our marriage had come to? The prospect of taking these measures felt like conceding defeat, as if I was officially abandoning the trust we previously shared. That evening, while she was out, I sat at my desk and took out my laptop. My hands shook as I opened the computer and began browsing through everything: bank accounts, investment accounts, and the property deed. Each paper I studied felt like a betrayal, but a persistent voice in my head reminded me that this was about survival, not sabotage. I didn't mean to hurt her. I couldn't get rid of the idea that if I didn't act now, I'd regret it later. I compiled a list of everything I could transfer and how to do it without raising suspicion. As I typed, I felt a crushing weight settle against my chest. I had entirely trusted her for years, and now here I was, playing defense against the person I thought would always have my back. Then I called my mother and explained why I needed her help, but not in detail. I need you to hold on to some things for me for a while. It's nothing bad, just something I need to do to protect myself, just in case. She was silent for a minute, likely trying to figure out what I wasn't saying. Are you okay? Her voice was filled with anxiety. Yeah, I lied. It's just a precaution, nothing to worry about. She didn't press me, but I could hear the pause in her voice when she responded. Of course, sweetheart. Whatever you need. I hung up the phone with an odd mix of relief and shame. I despised engaging her in this mess, but knowing she had my back provided some steadiness in an otherwise chaotic environment. By the time Em arrived home, I had already begun the process. I moved the majority of my assets, our cash, investments, and even the house, to my mother's name. I kept enough in our joint account to keep up appearances, but the rest was locked down. She didn't notice anything. She walked in, kissed my cheek, and asked if I wanted to watch a movie. I appeared okay, but inside I was a wreck. Part of me felt awful, as if I had betrayed her trust. But another part of me felt relieved, as if I was finally gaining control of a situation that had spiraled out of my control. Over the next 3 days, I tried to maintain a normal routine. I didn't want to let her know that anything had changed. She appeared satisfied, even unusually cheery at times. However, rather than putting me at ease, it increased my suspicion. If she was plotting something, she did an excellent job of concealing it. What stood out, however, was that she never brought up the finances again, not even after I questioned her the last time. It was as if the subject had evaporated from her memory. At first, I believed I had overreacted, and she dismissed the subject since it wasn't relevant. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized she was avoiding it. Almost as if she was afraid to bring it up again after I pressed her. I noticed her staring at me a few times, as if she was assessing my mood or contemplating whether to say something. Every time I noticed, she'd quickly return her attention to whatever she was doing, her phone, the TV, a book. It was slight, but it was present. It felt like she was waiting for me to bring it up, as if she didn't want to push the issue again. The silence only made me feel more anxious. It wasn't like her to drop anything she considered essential, and the way she avoided it suddenly appeared deliberate. If she was testing the waters, she was not going in. If she was waiting for something, I was not about to give her the go-ahead. Whatever her next move was, I knew I had to be one step ahead. Something was coming, but I didn't know when or how. All I could do was prepare. That night, I made certain that everything was solid. I glanced over the paperwork again, double-checking every aspect of my mother's asset transfers. The house, the savings, the investments, everything was now legally in her name, sealed in an uncontested trust. I even called her to confirm that she had all of the necessary papers. 2 weeks had passed, and everything appeared normal, frankly. She was acting more loving, even starting to talk about unrelated topics like jobs or what we should eat for the evening. It threw me off because she'd been aloof for months, avoiding anything more than superficial conversations. Part of me began to question whether I had been overreacting all along. Maybe the strange conduct was merely stress or something I didn't comprehend. But then, one random Friday night, she sat me down on the couch, turned off the television, and said, "We need to talk." My stomach fell quickly. I knew what she was going to say before she did. "I think we should get a divorce," she replied, her voice so calm it seemed prepared. It wasn't furious or emotional, it was simply frigid, as if she had told me we had run out of milk. I stared at her, unsure how to respond as she explained her argument. She mentioned needing space, wanting to figure herself out, and feeling like she'd lost her identity in the marriage, standard breakup phrases that didn't really explain anything. But then she said something that struck a different tone. "You know, I've made a lot of sacrifices for you over the years, and I don't think you really appreciate them. I deserve more." That last part stung. It wasn't just that she wanted out, it was that she framed it as if I owed her something, that everything was my fault, and she was simply claiming what was properly hers. As I sat there, trying to understand what she was saying, a new question arose. Why now? Then she said something that made everything start to make sense. "A friend of mine has been helping me see things more clearly," she continued, not looking at me. "A friend." I remained still, letting her speak, but my mind was racing. Who was this friend? Why were they so involved in my marriage? The way she stated it was not casual. It seemed like someone had been hyping her up, convincing her that leaving me wasn't simply a choice, but a strategy she needed to implement. And the more she talked about how she deserved more because of her sacrifices, the more I became skeptical. Sacrifices? What kind of sacrifice? She was happy with me, or so she said. I worked hard to offer her the life she desired, and it wasn't just about money. When she asked to move closer to her job, I agreed, even though it meant a lengthier commute for me. When she wanted to attend that pricey yoga retreat last year, I made sure we budgeted for it, even foregoing a vacation I was looking forward to so she could go. I backed her when she changed careers twice, telling her it was fine to take the risk because I wanted her happy. I believed being a decent husband meant putting her first whenever possible. And it wasn't as if I was an unresponsive, distant partner. I showed up. I remembered birthdays and random things she had mentioned loving. When she mentioned feeling caught in a rut, I suggested date nights. I listened to her complain about her job, friends, and family. I didn't always get it right, but I did try. That's why her "I deserve more" line hurt so much. I didn't even consider buying it. She was not upset due to anything I did or did not do. She was upset because something had changed in her. Perhaps it was the acquaintance she kept bringing up, or something else. But the lady sitting in front of me was not the woman I married, and I was not going to let her rewrite our marriage tale to fit her new narrative. I didn't press her at the moment. Instead, I nodded and said something innocuous, such as, "If that's how you feel, I guess we should figure out the next steps." She seemed startled that I wasn't arguing or begging her to stay, but I didn't mind. My attention had already changed. I needed to know who or what was causing her sudden, planned shift in conduct. She didn't just wake up one day and decide she wanted out. This was something greater, and I wasn't going to let it surprise me any more than it had already. After that chat, she went into her own apartment, and I received the divorce papers on Monday. Let me tell you, they didn't only want to stop the relationship. They were planning to take everything, half the house, my savings, my assets, and the car. She wanted it all. Plus, some ambiguous spousal support clauses that made little sense given her high salary. It seemed as if she was expecting me to give her all I had worked for. At first, I assumed she was just being vengeful, but the way she articulated her demands, so specific and aggressive, reassured me that she had someone guiding her through this. So I started digging. I couldn't just ask her who she'd been talking to, so I had to be clever. I began with her social media. She hadn't blocked me, and even though she didn't post frequently, I searched through her tagged photographs and comments looking for someone new. That's when I discovered the pattern. Jake repeatedly liked and commented on her posts. Nothing obscene, but enough to make me pause. I clicked on his profile, which was public. At first glance, he didn't appear to be much more than a 30-year-old marketing professional. But as I scrolled down, I spotted something unusual. He posted a photo at the same cafe I'd seen her at weeks before, on the same day I overheard her discussing starting afresh. My gut churned as I continued scrolling. More subtle signals were a comment on one of her pictures that read, "You've got this," as well as a selfie he'd taken from what appeared to be her new residence. None of it was substantial evidence, but it was enough to raise my suspicion. I wasn't sure what to do with this information, but I knew I couldn't just sit there and wait for solutions to come my way. Her statement of a friend who helped her get through things remained with me, and I wanted to know who it was. I decided to contact one of our mutual acquaintances, Lisa. She and my wife had been friends for years, so she knew what was going on. I kept the conversation light at first, asking if she'd lately spoken with my wife or if anything seemed strange. Lisa reacted swiftly, saying she had no idea about the friend or any suggestions. I asked a few more probing questions, but she cut the conversation off defensively, claiming she couldn't help me. The entire situation felt rushed, as if she was trying to avoid becoming engaged. Not willing to give up, I called another buddy, Emily. I followed the same pattern, stating that I was simply trying to make sense of things. She was apprehensive at first, responding vaguely to my questions. When I pressed her more, she quickly ended the call, leaving me even more skeptical than before. I sat there, frustrated, trying to figure out my next move. Then, to my astonishment, Emily called back. She told me she needed to make sure what she said didn't come back to her. I assured it wouldn't, and after a long pause, she revealed what she knew. Apparently, my wife had been spending a lot of time with someone named Jake, whom she had met at work. Emily claimed she didn't know much else, but from what she'd heard, Jake was very active in the divorce advice my wife was receiving. Hearing that name felt like a puzzle piece fitting into place. It was evident that this was more than just her need for space or to find herself. Someone else was in the picture, directing her decisions, and I was eager to discover why. I choose to confront it in my own manner. That Saturday, I headed to her apartment building and parked a block away, trying to confirm what I already suspected. A few hours later, she and Jake stepped out of the building. They did not hold hands or anything, but the way they walked together, close, leaning in to talk, was plenty. They got into his car and drove away, leaving me sitting there, staring at the spot where they had been. I did not follow them. I did not need to. At that point, it was evident she hadn't simply stopped loving me. She'd been preparing to go with someone else, and now everything made sense. The unexpected distancing, the money questions, the forceful demands, and the divorce papers. She wasn't simply abandoning me, she was leaving me with nothing, and she was accompanied by someone at all times. I went home that night, my head racing with everything I'd learned. The betrayal burned, but what hurt the most was how premeditated everything was. She was using the divorce as a stepping stone to whatever life she was creating with Jake. But she had no idea what I had planned for her. The first mediation session felt strained from the time we stepped in. Her lawyer arrived with a binder so thick that it appeared they were bringing a case against a Fortune 500 firm. He began listing her demands as if they were entirely reasonable: half the house, the money, my assets, the car, and even some gibberish about spousal support. I remained silent, seeming to listen, but I was waiting for my attorney to make his move. When it was finally our turn, he handed a stack of paperwork across the table and said, "Before we proceed, I think it's important for everyone to review these." Her lawyer took the papers and skimmed through them. His confident posture changed fast as he flipped through the pages, his brow furrowing harder with each one. "What is this?" he inquired, gazing at my lawyer. "These documents show the transfer of all major assets into a trust under my client's mother's name," my lawyer said calmly. "The transfers were completed several weeks before the divorce filing, and the trust is fully legal and irrevocable." The room became utterly silent. Her lawyer looked at her, confused and frustrated. "You didn't mention this," he stated flatly. She snatched the papers from his hands and flipped through them, her face flushing. "This can't be real," she said, staring at the notarized signatures and dates. Then she turned to me, her countenance changing from incredulity to rage. "You planned this?" she muttered, gazing at me as if I'd committed a heinous crime. "You knew I was going to file, and you set this up to screw me over." I did not respond. I just sat there and let her connect the dots on her own. Her lawyer, apparently agitated, requested my counsel to elaborate. So he did, slowly, deliberately, and with every piece of evidence necessary to make the transfers irrefutable. The dates aligned exactly, indicating that I had transferred everything well before she filed. The signatures were duly notarized, and the confidence was solid. There was nothing they could do to challenge it. She was furious. "You're unbelievable," she said, leaning forward in her chair. "I can't believe you'd do something like this to me." I still did not say anything. What was there to say? This was not about me doing anything to her. This was to defend myself because she had made it apparent she was not going quietly. The conference finished with her lawyer saying something about needing to rethink their strategy, but everyone in the room knew they had no further moves to make. When we walked out of the building, she took me aside in the hallway, her expression a mix of rage and desperation. "This isn't over," she added, her tone low. "You're going to regret this." I just looked at her and said, "I already regret trusting you. That's the only regret I have." Things escalated faster than I had anticipated following the mediation session. She went into complete meltdown mode almost instantly. It began with the calls, endless calls. At first, she appeared calm, even remorseful, leaving voicemails that began, "I think we just need to talk," or "I know this got messy, but we can fix it." When I did not answer, the tone changed. By the second day, her messages alternated between sobbing and screaming. One voicemail would be her lamenting about making a mistake and not wanting to lose what we had created together. Then she'd launch into a furious tirade accusing me of being stingy and cruel, blaming me for everything that was wrong in her life. I ignored it all. My lawyer told me not to engage, and I honestly did not want to. I was finished playing her games, but she was not. When the calls and texts did not work, she began telling stories. Mutual friends informed me that she had been telling people that the divorce was a hoax, and that it was all part of a larger farce. A prank? I mean, who would believe that? The flaws in her story quickly became apparent. Friends began to ask questions like, "If it was a prank, why did you file actual legal paperwork?" Or, "Why hire a lawyer and make such specific demands if it wasn't serious?" When others didn't instantly accept the hoax justification, she doubled down. She said it was not a joke, but rather a test of our relationship's strength. She began casting herself as the victim, claiming that my reaction had hurt and betrayed her, that I had gone too far and broken our marriage's trust. At first, some individuals seemed to believe her stories. I'd get strange emails or comments from acquaintances like, "Wow, I didn't realize things were so rough for her." Even her brother lashed out, saying, "You should have just talked it out instead of being so drastic." It was annoying, but I knew the truth would eventually come out. And it did, due to a common buddy. Let us call him Matt. Matt and I were not particularly close, but we had always been nice. A few weeks after the mediation, he messaged me unexpectedly, stating he had something I needed to see. When we met, he brought out his phone and showed me a series of text messages between her and Jake. I was confused at first. "How did you even get these?" I inquired, scanning through the messages. Matt revealed that he and Jake shared a mutual buddy, who had heard their talks. Apparently, this common acquaintance had grown concerned about the way things were going, especially when Jake began gloating about how he was assisting her in securing her future. It didn't take long for that common buddy to figure out what securing her future really meant, trying to bleed me dry. Feeling awful about remaining silent, the buddy grabbed screenshots of the texts and sent them to Matt, believing he had a better relationship with me and could warn me. "This guy's been playing both sides," Matt replied, shaking his head. "He's been hyping her up to take you for everything while making her believe he'd be there for her afterward." Matt gave me the texts and said, "I thought you should know. You don't deserve this, man." The texts were terrible. She wasn't just ranting to Jake about the divorce. She was actively planning her future steps with him, and he was guiding her through them. A message she left read, "Once the settlement's done, we'll have everything we need. I just need him to agree to the terms." Jake responded, "Don't back down. Make him feel guilty if you have to. He owes you. We'll start fresh once you've got the money." I sat there, staring at Matt's phone and trying to understand what I was reading. This was neither a misunderstanding or an emotional response to a failed marriage. This was a cold, deliberate manipulation. I thanked Matt and he left, but my thoughts were racing. Everything made sense now: her abrupt isolation, her fixation with our finances, and her harsh demands throughout the divorce. It was all part of a plan, one she had been developing with Jake behind the scenes. The text soon circulated among our mutual friends. Matt shared them with a few friends, and they quickly spread. Her story suddenly ceased to be credible. People who had previously been indifferent or even supportive of her began to distance themselves, and the change was nearly immediate. People who had previously defended her or remained neutral suddenly recognized her for who she truly was. Even her closest allies started to distance themselves. By the time the divorce was finalized, she had only her personal things. Her lawyer quietly dismissed her complaint after recognizing there was no legal basis to stand on. All of those bold requests had crumbled under the weight of the documents I had produced, and the trust I had established with my mother was unbreakable. Jake seemed to vanish as soon as things began to unravel. I wouldn't be surprised if he used her as much as she did me. From what I could tell, he'd been feeding her fantasies of independence and a new beginning, but the moment it became evident she wasn't going away with anything, he was gone. Without Jake in her corner, her confidence plummeted. The calls and texts continued, but they became increasingly desperate. She was not accusing me anymore. She begged. "Can we just talk, please? I'll do anything to fix this." One voicemail stated. A different opinion. "You don't have to forgive me, but can't we just settle this and move on? I'll drop everything if you just talk to me." I did not respond. I could not. It was too late to reverse the harm. Even her family began to drift away. Her brother contacted me at one time, apologizing for some of the things he had said before when he believed her side of the story. "I didn't know what she was doing to you," he said. "I'm sorry I ever took her word for it. As for me, I received the house, my savings, and something I hadn't experienced in a long time: peace of mind." My mother, as usual, was my rock. She arrived with buckets of paint and a list of suggestions to help me reclaim the area as mine. Now, life feels like it's mine again. No more second-guessing every small interaction. No longer feeling betrayed. Just peace. She is a chapter from my history that I no longer read. And the remainder of the story is entirely up to me to write. After my parents refused to help babysit and compared my children to my sister's kids, I stopped helping them with free house repairs. The following day, my phone burst. Thanksgiving was intended to be a time for family, excellent food, and a reprieve from reality, but it turned out to be a disaster. We were all gathered at my parents' new property, which I had spent the previous 2 months renovating for them. They had asked me to do it, so I accepted. New floors, Plumbing repairs, repainting, and electrical work. I spent every free hour there, covered in dust and sweat, ensuring that everything was flawless. Meanwhile, they sat peacefully in their flat, waiting for the house to be completed. I did not complain. They were my parents, and helping them was the right thing to do. In exchange, I had requested only one thing: occasional babysitting. Not every day, not every weekend, only when I needed it. My wife died a few years ago, and I was doing my best to raise my children alone. But sometimes I needed assistance. I believed it made sense, and they had always agreed, until that night. We were in the middle of supper when my father laid down his fork and said, "We're not going to babysit your kids anymore." I assumed he was kidding, but his expression was serious. The table became quiet. Then he went on to imply that they were exhausted, that my children were too much, and, worst of all, compared them to my sister's children. He mentioned how well-behaved, quiet, and easy they were, unlike mine. I looked over to my sister. She didn't say anything, just sat there smiling. Something inside of me twisted. I'd spent 2 months fixing up her house for free. They had never had to lift a finger, and now they were telling me that my children, were a burden to them, that they weren't as good as my sisters. I took a big breath and tried to hold it together. Then I said, "Really? I'll stop fixing your house." There was silence. My father just looked at me like I had hit him. My mother stepped in and tried to smooth things over. She started talking about how I didn't realize how difficult it was for them, and how much they had done for me. She made it appear as if I was pushing them to do unpaid work, while in reality, I had barely asked for anything. Before I could react, several of our other relatives spoke up. They did not like it. One of my aunts remarked it was foolish to talk about my children in that manner, especially in front of them. Another uncle pointed out how much I had already done for my parents, thereby saving them thousands of dollars on repairs. My sister remained mute, soaking all the accolades for her wonderful children. I stood up. "Thank you for a great Thanksgiving dinner," I told you. "I'm extremely grateful for everything." I then turned to my children and informed them that we were going. We collected our coats and hurried to the car, leaving a table filled with startled expressions. That night, my children questioned me why their grandparents had said those things, and why they were constantly comparing them to their cousins. I moaned and stroked my cheek. The world isn't always fair, and sometimes grandparents aren't the nicest people. They gazed at me, expecting for more, so I made sure to express what was most important. "But I love you both more than anything." I went to bed, weary. I had no regrets, but it hurt nonetheless. The next morning, I had 52 missed calls from my parents. When I saw 52 missed calls, I assumed something horrible had happened. My stomach dropped. I instantly called my mother back, half expecting to hear about an emergency. Instead, as soon as she answered the phone, she began ranting as if I had personally set fire to her home. "John, you need to come over right now," she urged. I frowned. "Why? What happened?" She skirted the question and insisted that I come over. My father also got on the phone, his tone tense but controlled. "Just come, John. We need to talk." I was not foolish. I knew exactly what this was about, but I knew I had to leave nonetheless. My children still had some belongings in their house, and I did not want to leave them behind. So I informed them that I'd be there in an hour. When I got inside their flat, I knew things hadn't calmed down overnight. My mother was pacing. My father was standing in the kitchen with his arms crossed, and my sister, who had seemingly decided to become even more involved, was seated on the couch, as if she were moderating a presidential discussion. It began immediately as I closed the door behind me. My mother leaped in first. "John, don't you think you overreacted?" I stared at her. "Overreacted?" My father jumped in. "Look, we're sorry if we hurt your feelings, but you can't just refuse to finish the house because of this." I nearly laughed. There it was. That was what this was all about, not the family or the children, but the house. I shake my head. "So, let me get this straight. You call my kids a burden, say they're too much for you, compare them to my sister's kids in front of everyone, and now when I say I won't do the work you asked me to do for free, I'm the problem." My mother placed her palm on her chest, as if I had just badly offended her. "That's not fair, John. We have done a lot for you. We took care of your kids for years." My sister has finally spoken up. "Mom, Dad, you really shouldn't compare the kids like that." For the first time, my parents seemed astonished. My mother blinked at her. "You don't think we were right?" My sister shrugged. "It's not about being right. You just shouldn't have said it in front of the kids. It's not okay." I must admit, I didn't expect her to say that. She wasn't exactly defending me, but she wasn't supporting them either. Instead of backing down, my father turned back to me. John, we just want this to be over. You're not going to cut us off over something so small. I looked him dead in the eyes. Watch me. My mother gasped, as if I had threatened to place her in a nursing home. My father began to say something else, but I was done. I went to the closet, got my children's clothes, and proceeded out the door. And that was when my mother said it. John, you're being selfish. I paused. Selfish? After 2 months of free labor? After bending over backwards to help them? After never complaining about all the times they needed something from me? I turned around. Selfish? You want me to work on your house, but you won't even look after your own grandchildren. You want my time, my effort, my energy, but the second I need something, it's suddenly too much for you. My mother opened her mouth to respond, but I was finished. You don't have to babysit anymore, but I don't have to fix your house either. Then I walked out. That was only the beginning. Things worsened during the next few weeks. First, they attempted to force me to return. Then they attempted to guilt me. Then they begged, because they had a serious situation. Hiring professionals would cost a fortune, and the longer I ignored them, the more desperate they became. But, just when I thought they couldn't get any more manipulative, something happened that changed everything. For the first few days following the incident, I ignored their calls. I ignored their text messages as well, then began the guilt trip. First, my mother gave the typical, "We're getting old, John, we won't be around forever" spiel. Then my father wrote me a long note about family loyalty and how I was being unreasonable over a minor misunderstanding. Meanwhile, my sister remained relatively silent. I assumed she was trying to stay out of it, but at least she spoke up briefly during the debate. Then, about a week after Thanksgiving, I received a message from my father that made me laugh. John, we forgive you? Can you come finish the house this weekend? Forgive me? I did not even respond. That's when they changed their strategy. At first, they tried to bribe me. My mother called to say they'd start babysitting again if I finished the house. I told her no. My father then texted me that they'd be willing to help with the kids if I came over to talk things out. I told him no. Then they sent my sister to try. She called one night and began with light conversation, inquiring about my children. Then she spoke casually. You know, maybe you should just finish the house. They're being stubborn, but it's probably easier if you just get it done. I laughed. So I do free labor and in return, they insult my kids, and you think I'm the one who should back down? She paused. I mean, it's their house, John. They're just stuck in their ways. You know how they are. I do. That's why I'm not doing it. She exhaled. Look, I get it, okay? But they're never going to admit they were wrong. They're our parents. That struck me. She knew they were mistaken. She wasn't even attempting to dispute it, but she knew they'd never say it aloud. I told her I had to leave and hung up. That night, I considered everything. About how for years, I had done things for them without expecting anything in return. About how they had never showed me genuine appreciation. They acted as if it was my responsibility to help them but an inconvenience to help me. And I determined I was finished, completely. That was the night I blocked their numbers. 2 days later, my sister arrived at my place unexpectedly. I opened the door and noticed her standing there, looking embarrassed. We need to talk, she said. I allowed her inside. She sat down at my kitchen table and stared at me for a moment. Then she sighed. They called the contractor, she explained. It astonished me. Good, so they finally got someone to do it? She grimaced. Yeah, but there's a problem. I waited. They got scammed. I blinked. She nodded. Dad hired some guy off Facebook because he was cheaper than a real company. Paid him up front and now he's gone. Took the money and disappeared. I couldn't help it. I laughed. My sister shot me a glance. John, they lost $10,000. I stopped laughing. 10 grand? Wait, where did they even get that much money? They borrowed some of it, she told me. From family. That part took me off guard. Who? I asked. She hesitated before saying. Uncle Mark, Aunt Linda, even Grandma. I sat back. They borrowed from other individuals to avoid acknowledging they needed me, and now they were $10,000 in debt with a half-finished house. I shake my head. That's not my problem. My sister nodded slowly. I know, and I told them that. That made me pause. You what? She exhaled. I told them they should have just apologized to you. That they did this to themselves. For the first time in this disaster, I felt a shift. My sister, their favorite and golden kid, had actually spoken up for me. She leaned forwards. John, they're desperate. They want you to come back. They're still being stubborn, but they know they messed up. I crossed my arms. She shrugged. And I think you should make them beg. Hearing my sister say that threw me off. She had always been their favorite, the one they admired and supported. And now she told me to make them beg? I raised an eyebrow. You really think they'll do that? She flashed me a half smile. They don't have a choice? For the first time in my life, I felt in control. I slumped back in my chair. So what exactly do they want from me? She exhaled. They want you to come over and talk. I laughed. Yeah, I've heard that before. She nodded. I know, but this time they're not in control, you are. And she was correct. I did not go that day. I did not go the following day either. I let them sit in their messes. Allow them to sweat. A few days later, my mother broke. She wrote a rambling text that was part apology and part excuse. She admitted that they may have been unjust and should not have said what they did. But what is the funniest part? We should have handled things differently, but you also overreacted. I genuinely laughed when reading it. Even when they were desperate, they had to assign some blame. I ignored the message. Then my father tried. His response was simpler. John, we need you. Come back and finish the house. We'll figure everything else out later. No apologies, just say, we need you. I also overlooked that. The next night, my sister called. Okay, she said. I think they're actually breaking this time. What happened? They told me to tell you they're sorry. I blinked. Wait, they actually said that? She paused. Well, they told me to tell you, not in those exact words, but... I exhaled. Close enough. She then said something that astonished me. They asked if I thought you'd ever speak to them again. That made me pause. For the first time, I realized they were truly terrified. They were concerned not only about the house, but also that they had pushed me too far. Honestly, they had. I agreed to meet with them, not because I wanted to, but because I wanted to hear from them. I told my sister I'd come over on my own terms. When I walked into their apartment, they seemed less confident and more apprehensive. My mother had been crying. My father looked fatigued. I sat, crossed my arms, and waited. Finally, my father sighed. We messed up, John. That was as close to an apology as I was going to receive. He went on to say how they didn't plan to hurt me, but were frustrated, exhausted, and stressed. That the home had gotten overbearing, and that they had spoken inappropriately. Then my mother finally spoke. Her voice was quiet. We love you and the kids. And, for the first time, I believed her. I waited for them to be silent for a bit before saying, I'm not finishing your house. My mother gasped, like if I'd slapped her. My father tensed. John, he answered. I cut him off. You had 2 months of free labor from me. You had help whenever you needed it, and the one thing I asked for in return was too much for you. Now I'm done. I'm not angry anymore, but I'm not fixing your house. Silence. My mother seemed to want to quarrel, but she didn't. My father stared at the table. My sister was just watching. Then I stood up. But I'm willing to move forward if you stop treating me like I owe you something, if you stop treating my kids like they're less than my sisters, and if you understand that from now on, if I help you, it's because I want to, not because you expect it. They nodded because they had no other option. I left that day feeling I'd won. And for the first time in a long while, I felt liberated. Things did not suddenly improve following the meeting. My parents were not suddenly better people, and I wasn't foolish enough to believe they wouldn't try to push the boundaries again. But something had changed. They realized I wasn't going to be their handyman, backup plan, or safety net. They were afraid because they knew I was about to walk away. For a few weeks, there were no needless phone calls or guilt trips, only silence. It was nearly calm. Then, one afternoon, I received a text from my mother. Can we take the kids this weekend? We miss them. I stared at the text for a moment. This was the same woman who had referred to them as a burden and had made comparisons to my sister's children in their presence. Has she suddenly missed them? I tried to dismiss it, but I remembered my children. So I asked her, do you want to go? They paused. My youngest, Ben, appeared hesitant. My oldest, Emily, crossed her arms. Are they going to be weird again? I was honest. Maybe. They thought about it. Then Emily shrugged. I guess we can go. So I quickly said. Sure, I'll drop her off at 5. My parents were not the same that weekend when I dropped her off. My mother seemed extremely kind, as if she was trying too hard to show she wasn't the bad guy. My father was silent. I stayed for a few minutes, just enough to ensure my children's comfort. Then, before I left, my father pulled me aside. "We really love them, John," he remarked. "We just messed up." It wasn't a full apology, but for my father, it was as close as I could get. I just nodded. "Good. Then don't mess up again." Later that night, I received a call from my sister. "I have to tell you something," she said. Her voice conveyed seriousness. "What is it?" she exhaled. "Mom told me something the other day about why she stopped babysitting." I sat upright. "Because they were tired, right?" She paused. "No, that wasn't it. At least not the whole reason." I frowned. "What was it?" She took a deep breath. "You were jealous, John." I blinked. "Jealous of what?" She paused. "Of you. Of how much the family stood by you at Thanksgiving. Of how close you are with your children. About how you became the center of attention when they're used to it being me. That really threw me. That doesn't even make sense." "It does to them," she explained. "You felt like you lost control, like people were looking at you as the good son, the responsible one, and that pissed them off." I sat there, trying to digest everything. My parents were more than just tired of babysitting, they were bitter. I'm bitter because I was a nice father. It was wild. It was sad. And that just reinforced one thing for me: they would never really change. I did not inform my parents what my sister said. It wouldn't have altered anything, but I did modify how I handled them from that point forward. Everything was on my terms. When they wanted to see the children, only if my kids wanted to. If they needed my assistance with something, they had to ask, not assume. If they ever disrespected my children again, that was it, no more chances. And the best part? They knew. For the first time in my life, I was not simply their son. I was someone they needed to respect. And that was worth everything. For a while, everything remained polite. My folks were on their best behavior. They didn't push, guilt me, or ask me for help around the house anymore. It was almost as if they had finally understood. Until they hadn't. My aunt contacted me one Sunday afternoon and asked, "John, did you see what your mom posted on Facebook?" It was never a pleasant sentence to hear. When I opened the app, there was a lengthy, dramatic post from my mother about how family members should always help one another and how some people forget where they came from. After everything we've done, it's heartbreaking to see our own son turn his back on us. She did not mention my name, but everyone understood who she was talking about. And the best part? She concluded, "At least we still have our amazing daughter, who never left us." That was it. That was it. I was done. I didn't text or phone her. I wrote a simple response to the post. "You're right, Mom. Family should help each other. That's why I spent 2 months fixing your house for free while you sat in your apartment. That's why I asked for nothing in return except that you treat my kids with basic respect. And when you called them a burden and compared them to my sister's children, I realized that you don't want a family. You want servants. And I'm not playing that role anymore." I pressed submit and saw the torrents open. The first comment came from my uncle. "Wow, I didn't know the whole story. This is messed up." Then my aunt. "John is right. You took advantage of him. He gave you everything and you repaid him by insulting his children. Unbelievable." Then my grandmother, the one from whom they borrowed money. "You told me you needed the money because John refused to help you, but you never told me why. Now I see the truth." Comment after comment sided with me, and the best one came from my sister. "I love Mom and Dad, but John is telling the truth. They treated him unfairly, and he has every right to leave." My golden sister, the one they always favored and supported, didn't defend them. I sat back and watched my parents' reputations crumble in real time. About an hour later, the post was deleted. My mother tried to call, but I didn't answer. She then texted, "Was that necessary?" I responded, "Was your mail necessary?" There was nothing. A few days later, my father caved in. He simply wrote, "We were wrong. We're sorry." No excuses. No blame. And, frankly, I didn't need anything else. I never worked on their home again. They had to hire someone at full price. I would never let them shame me into anything again. If they wanted to see my kids, it was because they wanted to, not because they forced it. And what's the biggest change? They never compared my children to my sister's children again because they knew if they did, it would be their final time seeing her. I had placed them in their place, and for the first time, they realized it. I'd won. I refused my aunt's outrageous request, but she manipulated my husband into leaving me. I later found out he had been having an affair with her. I, 28F, have been married to my spouse, Adam, 30M, for 3 years. We had our ups and downs, as any marriage does, but I thought we were relatively stable. That is why the entire situation has taken me entirely by surprise, and I am now wondering whether I am somehow responsible for this catastrophe. My aunt, let us call her Natalie, has always been strange, to say the least. Growing up, she was the type of person who would perform a favor for you just to hold it over your head for the rest of your life. As a child, I remember her as an overbearing presence, always talking about how much she had done for everyone and how much they owed her. It was simply her method of retaining control. She is known in the family for being manipulative, but I never expected to get caught up in her games, especially not like this. Years ago, when I was younger, about 18 or 19, I was going through a difficult financial period. My parents were not present at the time, and I had recently moved out on my own, scraping by on part-time jobs and figuring things out. It was a terrible moment, and Natalie came through for me in ways that I sincerely appreciated at the time. She lent me some money, not a lot, but enough to get me through a couple of months until I could get back on my feet. I thanked her politely and eventually paid her back in full. I assumed that was the end of it, and for years it appeared to be. She never brought it up or stated that I owed her anything, so I believed that was all in the past. Fast forward to now, and Natalie has a daughter. Let's call her Grace. Grace and I were never close growing up. She is a few years younger than me, but we have always been in separate social circles. The reality is that we've never really liked each other. She has always been the spoiled, entitled type, getting everything she wants because Natalie always puts her first. Grace commands the spotlight at family gatherings. During the holidays, Grace receives the greatest gifts, the most praise, everything. I've learned to overlook it over time because that's how Natalie operates. She adores her daughter as if she were a princess, and the rest of us are expected to be grateful simply to be in their company. So Grace's birthday is coming up. Natalie has been hinting for weeks that her daughter's birthday should be exceptional and that she wants to offer her everything. At first, I didn't think much of it because Grace's birthday isn't exactly on my radar. When Natalie suggested it, I was nice and replied something like, "Oh, that sounds great," but I wasn't really paying attention. Then, out of nowhere, Natalie phones me one evening and says she has to speak with me about something serious. I assumed it was for Grace's birthday or a family event, so I agreed to meet up with her. When we met, Natalie made the most odd and absurd request I've ever heard. She told me straight out that the only thing Grace wants for her birthday is for me to leave my husband, Adam. I was stunned. Like, what? Why? Why would she even think about that? Natalie went on to say that Grace has had a crush on Adam for years, something I had no idea about, and that she believes he is her soulmate or something. According to Natalie, Grace has been longing for him since the day they met, and now that she is about to turn 26, she believes this is her final chance to be with him. She truly believes Adam belongs with her and that I am preventing them from being happy together. At first, I assumed this was a joke. Natalie couldn't possibly expect me to leave my spouse as a birthday present for her daughter. But as she continued speaking, I understood she was dead serious. She even brought up the money she lent me years ago, claiming that I owed her and that this was the best way to repay her. According to Natalie, if I were truly grateful for her assistance when I was struggling, I would do this for her daughter. I was extremely shocked. I couldn't believe what I heard. Of course, I said no. I was not going to end my marriage over an absurd demand from my aunt. I informed Natalie that this was preposterous, that I would never abandon Adam, and that I owed her nothing. I had reimbursed her for the money, and whatever favor she believed she had done for me gave her no right to demand this. She didn't take it well. Natalie got angry and accused me of being ungrateful and self-centered. She went on and on about how Grace deserved happiness, how she had made many sacrifices for me over the years, and how I was ruining everything by refusing to see reason. I walked out of that conversation exhausted but convinced that I had done the right thing. I was not going to allow her to influence me like that. I didn't give it much thought after that, but a few days later, things started to change between me and Adam. He grew aloof and colder than normal. When I asked him what was wrong, he just brushed me off. I assumed he was upset at work or something, but then he sat me down and announced that he was leaving me. He didn't go into great detail, just expressing that things weren't going well and that he thought it was time for us to part ways. I was devastated. This came out of nowhere, and I had no idea what had happened so fast. It wasn't until a mutual buddy contacted me that I learned what had transpired. Natalie allegedly went behind my back after our talk and told Adam everything, but she twisted the tale so that it appeared I was to blame. She informed Adam that I had been ungrateful for everything she had done for me, that I had no regard for family, and that I had been keeping secrets from him. She even made up stories about how distant and cold I had been with Adam, twisting the situation to make it look that I was the problem in our marriage. According to what I've heard, she convinced him that I wasn't telling him the truth, which pushed him over the line. So now I'm attempting to pick up the pieces of my life after my spouse abandoned me due to my manipulative aunt. Part of me wonders whether there was already something wrong with our marriage, and this was the final straw. Maybe I missed some signs. Maybe I wasn't as good a wife as I thought. But another part of me is outraged. How could Natalie have done this to me? How could she go behind my back and destroy my marriage simply because I refused to give her what she wanted? And why did Adam believe her so quickly? Shouldn't he have trusted me enough to at least discuss it with me before making such a big decision? I'm so confused and hurt right now, and I don't know what to do. My family is divided on the issue, with some saying I should have simply let it go and others agreeing Natalie is out of line. But the reality is, I don't think this is just about Natalie anymore. I believe there is a greater issue at play, such as Adam searching for an out and seeing this as the perfect reason. I'm not sure whether I'm overreacting, but I can't shake the sensation that this entire thing is somehow my responsibility. Perhaps if I had handled things differently with Natalie and paid more attention to Adam's needs, none of this would have occurred. But, at the same time, I feel as if I was backed into a corner and would have lost regardless of what I did. So I die for refusing my aunt's foolish request to leave my husband as a birthday present for her daughter. Am I to blame for my husband leaving because of what she told him? I just need some feedback on this because everything seems to be spiraling out of control right now, and I'm not sure where to turn. Update 1. Hello everyone, it's been a few weeks since my life totally crumbled, and I'm still trying to figure out how to go on from what occurred with my aunt, Natalie, and my husband Adam. Things have been difficult to process. I never thought I'd be providing an update, yet here I am, trying to make sense of it all. At first, I assumed it was all due to Natalie's intervention, but considering everything that has transpired since, I'm beginning to wonder if there was something else going on between Adam and me, something I missed. I've been trying to piece it all together, and I keep coming back to the same question. Was this previously broken, and I simply didn't realize it? When Adam told me he was leaving, he didn't give me much detail. He merely told me that things were not going well and that he thought it was time to part ways. There was no big struggle or explosion, it was just over. I was heartbroken and puzzled. I assumed we were secure, or as secure as any marriage with ups and downs. Everything felt like it happened out of nowhere. After sitting with my thoughts and feelings for a few days, I decided to contact Adam. I wasn't willing to give up without at least discussing it. I texted him, asking if we could meet up and discuss what had transpired. I didn't get an answer straight away, and I spent the following 3 days in limbo, waiting for a response. Finally, Adam responded back, indicating he was not interested in chatting and that he had made his decision. I was devastated. It was as if he had closed the door on everything without thinking. However, this was not the worst part. He also told me he was already seeing someone else. Mind you, it hadn't even been a month since he left me when I discovered how quickly he had moved on. My world came apart. Was this someone he had been seeing before our breakup? Was I so blind that I didn't notice him drifting away sooner? I didn't ask him any of these questions because, frankly, I didn't want to know the answers. It felt like everything we had was erased in the blink of an eye. It's impossible to convey the range of emotions I've been feeling: anger, betrayal, confusion. It's all coming together. How did he manage to move on so quickly? How could he be so willing to let go of what we've accomplished? I'm wondering if this new relationship started before he left, or if there were issues in our marriage that I simply overlooked. I've been looking over every discussion we've had in the last few months to see if there were any red signals I overlooked. Nothing stands out. We had our regular fights, nothing major, and I never anticipated things to fall apart so quickly. Maybe I was too preoccupied with my own life and missed the signs that he was drifting away, but I also wonder if Adam had been looking for an escape all along and Natalie's manipulation was just the excuse he needed. My family is divided on the whole issue. Some people say I should have let it go to prevent the conflict with Natalie. Others agree that Natalie was completely out of line, and that I made the perfect decision by refusing her. However, in the end, none of this matters. The damage is done. Adam is gone and I'm forced to figure out how to restart my life now that he's moved on with someone else. I haven't spoken with Natalie or Grace since everything went down. They are no longer a part of my life, and I am grateful not to be exposed to their toxic energy. The thought that Natalie could go behind my back, influence Adam, and essentially ruin my marriage still baffles me, but I've recognized that there's no sense in attempting to undo what happened. What's done is done, and I need to go on. I'm going to be honest. I believe Adam is seeing Grace. I mean, it just makes sense that Natalie wanted me to end my marriage so Grace and Adam could be together. So, perhaps that is what is happening. I don't know, but I want to find out. Regarding Adam, I wish I could say I'm over it, but I am not. I still love him, and I probably always will. But I know our marriage is over. He has moved on, and it is now my turn to do the same. It will take time for me to recover from this, and there are days when the pain is terrible. But I want to get past it someday. Update 2. Hello everyone. First and foremost, thank you so much for all of your support, guidance, and kind words on my last post. I never anticipated so many people to care about my predicament, and it has meant everything to me. Before I begin the update, I'd like to address something that many of you mentioned. Many people suspected Adam was seeing Grace, and to be honest, I was beginning to believe it as well. Natalie had pushed me so hard to leave Adam for Grace's sake, and the way things turned out convinced me that there was something between them. Why would she make such a foolish request? I couldn't believe my aunt would ask me to leave my husband as a birthday present for her daughter if Adam and Grace weren't already dating. That's when things took an unexpected and really distressing turn. About 2 weeks ago, I got a message from Stephen, my Aunt Natalie's husband and Grace's father. I hadn't spoken to him in a long time, especially after things had gone bad, but he pleaded to meet in person, claiming he had something vital to tell me. Given how crazy things had already become, I was doubtful at first. I didn't want to get engaged in any more family drama, especially after what happened to Natalie and Grace. But something about Stephen's tone made me want to hear him out, so I agreed to meet up. When we met, Stephen appeared tired, as if the weight of the world was on his shoulders. I knew straight away that whatever he had to say would not be easy. He began by apologizing for Natalie, Grace, and all that had occurred. I had no idea where he was going with this, but then he revealed something unexpected. Adam was not seeing Grace. He was seeing Natalie. Yes, it's my aunt. Natalie, my manipulative and toxic aunt, is 50 years old. I was speechless. My mind went blank as I tried to figure out what he was saying. For a brief moment, I believed I had misheard him, but Stephen went on to recount everything in horrific detail. Natalie and Adam appeared to have been having an affair for some months. Stephen discovered it when he returned home early from a business trip one weekend. He walked into their house, into his bedroom, and found Natalie and Adam in bed together. My spouse and aunt, in their bed. Stephen admitted he had no idea how long it had been going on, but based on some of the texts and messages he discovered, it had been at least a few months, if not more. Natalie had been seeing Adam behind my back as she pressed me to leave him for Grace. The whole birthday present foolishness was just a distraction, a ruse to deceive me and everyone else while she secretly had an affair with my husband. I felt as if the ground had been pulled out from beneath me. I thought I was prepared for anything, but this exceeded my expectations. I was having trouble understanding what Stephen was saying. Natalie, among other persons. I knew she was manipulative, but I didn't expect her to do this. And Adam, the man I thought I knew and had built a life with, had he been sneaking around with my aunt the entire time? But it didn't end there. Stephen went on to inform me that Natalie had decided to leave him. Natalie intended to leave Stephen on Grace's birthday, and she and Adam were apparently planning to blow everything up. Yes, you have read right. She planned to devastate her own family on her daughter's birthday before fleeing with my husband. Grace was completely oblivious of all of this, which was just another layer of deception. Natalie had used her daughter as a pawn in this horrible, twisted game, fooling everyone into believing Grace had affections for Adam while, in reality, she was sleeping with him. Stephen informed me about it, and I sat there startled. I was unsure how to react. I had been concentrating all of my efforts on determining whether Adam was seeing Grace when, in fact, Natalie, my own aunt, had misled me in the worst conceivable way. After Stephen finished telling me everything, he handed me his phone and showed me some of the messages between Natalie and Adam. I couldn't look at them for long because it was too painful, the way they talked about me, their plans, and how they were going to start over after the dust had fallen. It made me physically ill. I still can't believe it. I spent weeks trying to believe that Adam could have feelings for Grace, but now, this was beyond anything I could have anticipated. Natalie had planned the entire affair from the beginning. She misled me and her own spouse while secretly having an affair with my husband. I've been trying to figure out where I should go next, but I'm still in shock. I thought I was dealing with a husband who left me for another woman, but now I'm having to accept the fact that he left me for my aunt, whom I considered family. I'm not sure if they're still seeing each other or if their little scheme failed when Stephen caught them. Part of me doesn't care at this point. What is done, And regardless of what happens to them, the harm has already been done to me. I wish I could say there is a silver lining, but for the time being, all I can do is attempt to get through it. I'll keep you all updated if anything changes, but for the time being, I'm just figuring out how to move ahead after everything that's happened. Thank you for your continued support. It has been a lifeline during this horror. Update 3. Hello everyone, it's been a while since the last update, and a few things have happened in the interim, so perhaps this is the final update to the horror I've been experiencing. I faced Adam, and while the outcome was not what I had hoped for, it did provide some closure. I suppose I always knew I'd have to address him personally. I simply didn't expect it to be that dramatic, or for him to beg me to take him back after discovering Natalie wasn't who he thought she was. It's tough to understand how I felt leading up to that moment, but I knew I couldn't move on with my life unless I confronted Adam. I needed to express my feelings and get the complete truth from him, no more running or second guessing. So I finally reached out to him and told him we needed to meet and chat. We met in a park, somewhere neutral, where I felt I could keep my emotions under control. I did not want the confrontation to take place in our home, which had so many memories, both good and bad. I got to the park and finally saw him after so many days. It felt odd. He looked fatigued, as if he hadn't slept in days, but I didn't care enough to ask him what had occurred or why he was so tired. I just went right to it. I assured him I knew everything. I informed him that I knew about Natalie and that she was the lady he had been fooling around with while I sat at home, trusting and loving him. The shock on his expression was not the same as when someone is apprehended. It felt more like shame. He couldn't look me in the eye for a time. He did not defend himself, which shocked me because I had expected excuses or an attempt to cover up. Instead, he simply nodded and confessed it. He verified everything. In some ways, it felt underwhelming. There was no rage or screaming, just a pitiful admission that he had damaged our marriage by having an affair. I had a lot I wanted to say. I had spent hours rehearsing this in my thoughts, but when the moment arrived, all I could say was, why? I needed to know what was wrong with us, or with me, that he would cheat on me like this. Adam began discussing how he was no longer pleased and how our marriage had become a routine. He mumbled something about being stuck, and Natalie helped him feel alive again. It felt like a punch in the belly. I couldn't believe he was using boredom as an excuse to wreck our lives. I stood there feeling disgusted. I informed him immediately that his selfishness had cost him everything. There were many other methods for him to deal with his feelings of being stranded. We could have sought therapy, taken a break, and communicated, but he decided to cheat on me, lie to me, and end our marriage. And that's when I informed him. I informed him that I was filing for divorce. I shouted it clearly and without hesitation, and a strange sense of power came over me. For the first time, I felt in control. I wasn't pleading with him to stay, nor was I forgiving him for his horrible decisions. I was finished. That is when the unexpected happened. Adam, who had been so casual about the affair up until this point, suddenly broke down. I'd never seen him like this. He genuinely began crying. I'm not talking about a few tears. He sobbed. He grabbed my hands and begged me not to forward with the divorce. He explained that everything with Natalie had come apart, that she was not who he thought she was, and that he had made the biggest mistake of his life. He stated that once the excitement of their affair faded, her actual personality emerged. Apparently, she is manipulative and domineering, often starting conflicts and even threatening to reveal their affair if he did not do things her way. He claimed she had made his life a terrible nightmare, and he regretted everything. It was strange to stand there and see this man, who had before appeared unaffected, break down in front of me. He told me he felt adrift without me and couldn't believe he'd given up our life together for someone like Natalie. He stated that he still loved me and would do anything to make things right. But honestly, I didn't feel anything. I had no sympathy for him, no desire to reclaim him, and no pity for him because of Natalie's conduct. I felt numb. The trust was gone. He had damaged it, and no amount of tears or apologies would fix it. I informed him that it was too late. I informed him that there was no way to restore what he had done, and I was not interested in attempting to heal the damage to our marriage. I believe that's when he understood I was serious. I was not going to forgive him, and there was no way to make things right or get back together. He kept begging, attempting to persuade me that we could work this out, that he was willing to do whatever it needed. But I'd already made a decision. I informed him that I deserved better, that I was moving on with my life, and that we had no future together. I believe part of me was expecting him to become defensive or lash out, as he had done in the past when we battled. But this did not happen. Instead, he broke down even more, realizing he'd lost me forever. I departed after that. I walked away without looking back. I've already filed for divorce, and it feels like a great weight has been lifted off my shoulders. I'm not claiming it's been easy. I still find it difficult to breathe at times because I am so heartbroken and deceived. But I know I made the correct decision. I know this is what I need to do to improve myself and start a new life. According to what I've heard, Natalie is furious with Adam for attempting to reconnect with me. Apparently, things between them worsened not long after the truth was revealed, and they are now both unhappy. Adam is paying the price for his decisions, and while I would never wish such chaos on anyone, I am no longer concerned. I don't care what happens between them. I'm just happy to be free of it. I've cut Natalie out of my life permanently. There is no forgiveness, no opportunity for reconciliation. I have no room in my heart for folks who betray me like way. She has left, and I am now focusing on myself. This has been the most difficult experience I have ever had, but it has taught me a lot about my own strength. I've discovered that I don't need someone who disrespects, lies, or cheats on me. I deserve a partner who appreciates me and our relationship, and I will never settle for anything less again. So that's it. I'm taking each day as it comes. It will take time to heal, but I am confident that I am on the correct path. Thank you to everyone who has offered me advice and support along the process. It mattered more than you could ever realize. I'm now ready to be done with this drama and move on with my life. My parents have chased away every boyfriend I have ever had. How can I prevent this from ruining my relationship with my current boyfriend? Original, February 13, 2025. I was very shy during high school and didn't leave my house unless I had to, so as a result I didn't get a boyfriend until my freshman year of college. After 7 months of dating my first ever boyfriend, I brought him to my parents' house for dinner, just so they could meet him. I had to step away for roughly 10 minutes to help my older sister with her baby, and when I came back, my BF, then 20 male, and my dad, old, were having a full-blown fistfight. We managed to stop them and my BF stormed off without saying anything, while my dad insisted my BF was incredibly rude and disrespectful to him and my mother and that a guy like that was no good for me, because he'd just end up doing the same thing to me. I was shocked that my BF could do such a thing because he had always been extremely sweet and I've never met or heard of anyone not liking him, but when I called him and told him what my dad had said about what happened, all he did was laugh and say I can believe whatever I want, before blocking me on everything. I was deeply disturbed by this, but my mom and sister insisted that he had just shown his true colors, and said my dad saved me from an abuser. I reluctantly accepted this, but something about it felt really off. I met my second boyfriend several months later, during my sophomore year. Part of me still felt my parents were part of the problem with my last BF, so I managed to get him to wait an entire year before introducing him to my parents. From the moment she laid eyes on him, every word my mom spoke to him was dripping with fake friendliness and subtle jabs implying she did not approve of him, which made him visibly uncomfortable. While we were eating dinner, she began asking me why I decided to date my BF, and asked about other guys and why they didn't work out. Some of the guys she asked about were completely made up. At this point it was clear what they were trying to do, and I silently vowed to talk to my boyfriend and tell him how my parents were trying to sabotage me. Unfortunately, it didn't get that far, as my dad chipped in and demanded to know how a boy, who couldn't support himself financially, was ever going to support his daughter. Mind you, we were both juniors in college at this point, and both of us were working part-time jobs. So this question was really insane. He responded by saying he'd already decided he wanted nothing to do with this family and was planning to break up with me when he got home, but he's just going to leave now. Within minutes, he was gone and I was blocked. Again. My parents insisted they did nothing wrong and just wanted to test his confidence as any parents would, but I pointed out that this was the second boyfriend they chased away, and they didn't do anything to scare off my older sister's husband. I went low contact with them after that, but fast forwarding a little bit, I eventually allowed them to gaslight me into introducing them to my third boyfriend, whom I had met towards the end of my senior year, and basically the same thing happened. I had made it through college unable to find a long-term BF, purely because of my parents. I did meet my current boyfriend, 28 male, 2 years ago, and I have managed to avoid introducing him to my family thus far. If he ever brought it up, I would always have a ready-made excuse prepared to explain why it wasn't possible, which has been pretty easy because he usually only asks about them when planning for major holidays. I have fallen madly in love with him and hope to start a family with him one day, but he recently told me that he can't even allow me to move in with him until he's had a chance to meet my family. I do not know what to do, as I know my parents will make it their mission to break us up if they meet him, but based on his insistence on meeting them, I realize I can't put this off any longer. Usually, relationships end because of something one person in the relationship says or does, and it's incredibly unfair that I always end up single because of things I cannot control. I want to tell my BF about my parents and insist that meeting them is a bad idea, but I've listened in on some of his conversations with his friends, and the general consensus among them seems to be that a girl with a super dysfunctional family is a massive red flag, and an indicator of what their married life would be like. So I come here asking, how do I approach the problem that is my parents without risking losing the longest relationship I've ever had? If my parents end up being the cause of yet another breakup, I just don't know what I'll do. I just don't know. Edit. Wow, I made this post about an hour before going to bed, but woke up to quite a few comments here. Thank you so much to everyone who has helped me realize what I need to do. I've read through all of the comments and saw some recurring questions come up that I wanted to address. I am not fully in contact with my parents primarily because they helped me a lot financially during college and when I first graduated and was looking for a job. When I went low contact with them, they constantly yelled at me for being ungrateful and said family does not turn on each other over minor disagreements involving boys. It sounds ridiculous when I type it here, but after months of this treatment, when I found myself faced with the decision to either tell them I forgive them so they'll pay for my dorm room, or refuse to forgive them and have to move back home, I ended up caving. Why didn't I stand up for my past BFs when I saw them being verbally abused? I don't know. I've never been allowed to talk back to my parents, so the thought of calling them out while we have company over is not something I realized I could do, I guess. My arguments with them after they ran off BF 2 and 3 were the only times I've ever come into full conflict with them in my entire life. I will be going to my boyfriend's house today after work, and will tell him everything. I am terrified he will still want to meet them, just thinking about it has me shaking at my desk. But you all are right. He has a right to know and make his own decision. Edit 2. I told him and even showed him this post. To make a long story short, he still would like to meet them but thanked me for telling him, as he always figured something was seriously wrong. My parents host dinners for our family every Sunday, and we will be attending this one. I suppose I'll make a new post with an update afterwards. Top comments. Comment 1. You stop bringing anyone you like around them. Period. Tell your boyfriend why. They get weird and run anyone you date off with their nonsense and you'd rather just avoid them altogether. My boyfriend knows all about my dysfunctional family and abusive upbringing. It didn't run him off. If anything, it brought us closer as he empathized. ETA. We just celebrated 6 years together. The right partner won't hold your family against you. You couldn't choose them, after all. Comment 2. If your plan is to stay with him in the long run, you have 2 options. 1. Come clean about why you don't want them to meet and explain exactly why you're scared of them meeting, or 2. Cut off your parents entirely and tell your boyfriend you cut them off. Ideally, either way you end up telling him why you chose what you chose. Good relationships take communication, and if your boyfriend doesn't know why he's being kept away from your family, that most likely will be the reason you break up. Update, February 18, 2025, 5 days from original update. I meant to make this update a lot sooner, but since my last post a lot has happened. I truly appreciate all the comments I received calling me out for hiding my parents being insane from my BF and encouraging me to be honest with him. My boyfriend is pretty involved now, so I guess I should give him a fake name. I will call him Ethan. I sat Ethan down and told him about my parents and how they ran off my previous boyfriends, before showing him my original post as many recommended. Fortunately, he did not seem to care that I hadn't told him, but he did agree with many commenters that my parents were more than just insane. They were outright abusive. Although he understood how I felt, he still said he would like to meet them, both to see it for himself, but also because he felt there was an underlying reason for their behavior. My parents have dinner for the family every Sunday, which I have been attending on the weeks that I'm not hanging out with Ethan that day, so we agreed that he would come to the next one. When Sunday came and we arrived at my parents' house, my anxiety was through the roof. Ethan had agreed to leave with me the moment things started to get out of hand, but with my parents that could have easily been as soon as we walked through the front door. My parents were surprisingly very nice, though. My dad actually seemed excited to see Ethan, and my mom fawned over her daughter bringing home such a handsome, confident-looking man. I couldn't understand what was happening. Ethan even shot me a look a couple times, as if to silently ask if he was missing something, because my parents were actually lovely. I want to provide a play-by-play of the entire night, but the post would just be too long. The point is, my parents had done a complete 180 from their previous behavior, and it made me look and feel crazy for trying to warn Ethan about them ahead of time. During dinner, my mom said she was so happy to see her daughter had finally found someone who wasn't judgmental and was willing to give me a chance because of the person I am today, because the past doesn't matter. My heart dropped. What was she talking about? Ethan said he does not know about anything in my past that may be cause of concern, and my parents exchanged a concerned look, as if it was rehearsed. My dad asked him why he thinks my previous relationships failed, and he said that he was under the impression they got scared away after meeting my parents. My mother looked at me with disappointment on her face and said, "Oh, P, is that really what you told him?" I was at a loss for words, but Ethan was not. He said that it's pretty clear they are trying to plant seeds of doubt in him about our relationship, but he is not interested, as he knows me well enough to know my character and that even if there was something serious in my past, parents who loved and supported me or even just wanted grandchildren would keep it a secret to avoid ruining my relationship. My dad said he already has 2 grandchildren, and motioned towards my sister, who did not have her kids with her that evening. Ethan said my dad must have been very supportive of my sister for her to be able to start a family while he tries to run off any guy I bring home, and my dad's response was very casual, but extremely shocking. He said, "Of course, she's actually mine." Everyone was quiet for a few moments, until Ethan spoke up and said that now all of the abuse they've only put me through is starting to make sense. My mom said he's spouting nonsense, and that I have not been abused in any way. She then looked at me and admitted her marriage had a rocky start, but both her and my father have moved past that. I was too busy replaying my entire life in my head to say anything. The previous boyfriends, the lack of support for my social outings growing up, the volleyball games I had to have a friend drive me to because my parents were always too busy, the rage I was always at risk of facing if I ever spoke my mind. All while my sister got the opposite. I started to cry, the hardest I ever have. Ethan immediately announced that we were leaving. My dad demanded we stay where we are so we can clear things up, but Ethan ignored him as he pulled me out of my chair and led me away. My mom screamed at me not to leave, and that this guy was trying to isolate me from my family. I yelled back that if anyone had been trying to isolate me, it was her, for my whole life. As we drove back to Ethan's place, my mom sent me several text messages cussing me out, saying one mistake doesn't change the fact that my dad loved, supported, and raised me, and that he would always be my real father. Ethan said he's not my dad, he's an abusive, controlling asshole who was taking his insecurities out on me. I ended up blocking both of my parents' numbers because they were saying some truly awful things to me, both about myself and Ethan. Ethan said he was expecting them to be crazy, but this was far worse than he could have anticipated. He said I need to go into therapy immediately, and that he will pay for anything my insurance doesn't cover. My parents showed up at my apartment twice yesterday to demand I come out and speak to them, but I've been staying at Ethan's all weekend and will likely be here all week. I'm not sure if this is the update y'all wanted. I had countless people enraged at me for being spineless and not standing up to my parents, and while I had planned on doing so, that's not what happened. I don't know what is going to happen with my parents, or where I go from here. But now that the holiday is over, I can spend some time looking for a good therapist. Top comments. So your mom cheated on your dad and you are the affair baby and they treated you poorly because of that? Is that the story, or has my reading comprehension failed me? Maybe you have a great father out there somewhere. 23andMe? Ethan sounds great. The truth shall set you free. My stepdaughter's prank went too far, causing a major conflict in our family. Now, my marriage and relationship with her may never be the same. I know the title sounds bad, but please read and throw away plus fake names. I, 38 million, married Judd, 44 feet, a few years ago, and I acquired a stepdaughter, Abby, 14 feet, as a result. I dated Judd when Abby was 8, met her when she was 9, and married Judd when she was 10. I'd say our relationship is okay. She doesn't act bratty towards me and respects me enough as her mom's husband. However, there is one glaring issue about her, and that is her pranking nature. Abby loves to pull pranks. Some examples are her hiding my car keys with what looked like 100 dubs in a box. I found them quickly because she failed to notice my keys have duct tape on them. Another one is when she hid in the fridge, something I still find very weird, to scare the first person who opened it. Well, last Wednesday, I arrived home and it seemed that I was the only one there. Only my shoes were at the doorstep, and I even called out Judd's and Abby's names with no answer. This is somewhat normal as Judd sometimes works late and Abby stays at school for extracurriculars. So I screwed around with my dog, a German Shepherd and Husky mix for anyone that will ask, for a bit, and then I decided to relieve myself. When I got to the bathroom, I noticed that the window cabinet was open. I thought nothing of it at first and unzipped my pants, but then I saw a shadow behind the shower curtains. I thought the worst and immediately punched the figure behind the curtains. Well, as everyone may have guessed from the title, it was Abby. She was making a prank video and I had not noticed that she propped her phone up on the bathroom cabinet with 2 cups. I'm not gonna lie, I did not hold back. I punched her as hard as I could. Her nose looked broken, and when I realized it, I flipped out, and so did she. After maybe 5 minutes of freaking out, I drove her to urgent care and informed Judd of the situation. Her nose was indeed broken and would need about 6 to 12 weeks of recovery. Abby won't talk to me, and as for Judd, she thinks that my action may have been justified, but also thinks I should have approached with more caution, which she has refused to elaborate on. So AITA? Comments. Comment 1. NTA. Get a copy of the video. If Abby starts bitching to people about how her stepdad broke her nose, you are looking at jail time. Get and keep a copy of the evidence that she startled you while you were peeing. You need to sit Judd and Abby down and have a serious conversation. Filming without consent while someone is in the bathroom is a massive invasion of privacy and illegal in many places. If she did this to another kid, it could be considered child PRN. While you are in the bathroom, you feel vulnerable with having your pants down, genitals out. Those feelings increase the fight-flight part of the brain, and that you react on instinct. Please tell Abby that you love her, and never meant to hurt her. Comment 2. And why would a young girl think pranking her stepfather in the bathroom is ever a good idea? She should at least be talked to about pranking anyone in the bathroom, especially with a video? Comment 3. This is so unfortunate. People get killed for this. She's lucky she's alive. That's the normal reaction. To fight. As messed up this is stuck firmly because this is a life lesson. Play stupid games and win stupid prizes. Fortunately, it's all on tape, right? So you're protected. What she did is actually what's unforgivable. Her dumb antics are gonna get someone killed or put in jail. Her mother needs to address this. Not one more prank. Ever. Comment 4. How stupid does a 14-year-old have to be to not know that recording someone in the bathroom without their consent is a very bad idea? And what was the stupid prank? Boo, I scared you, so I'm gonna put your reaction and PP on social media. Hey. NTA, but you might want to get legal advice lawyer before a false, and more sinister version gets circulated. Comment 5. As a teacher, I can say that 14-year-olds are indeed very uninformed. Had a 14-year-old once who took 30 minutes to go to the bathroom. When he finally came back, because he was a kid who didn't usually cause trouble, and I was worried, I privately asked, "What the heck took so long?" His response? "I was waiting for people to leave the bathroom." I still didn't get it, so he elaborated. If you use a stall, you're probably trying to shit or do something that you need privacy for, and other people will see your feet under the stall and try to film you by putting their phones over the walls of the stall. I started requiring that students trade their phones for the hall pass after that. Also told the administration, but they didn't do anything. Point is, yes, teenagers are that uninformed that behavior like this doesn't click as being problematic. Update. 12 days later. Well, this blew up big time. Let's address a few things. Abby's pranking nature isn't just situated on me, she has pulled pranks on her friends, the neighbors, and at school. The school has called Judd several times about this as they have resulted in mild vandalism. The refrigerator prank. She was 11 when that happened, not a grown teenager. It was a brand new and very large fridge that my uncle bought and showed it off to everyone. So she climbed in until he opened it again. Judd yelled at her saying that she could have suffocated in there and took her outside to scold her for a few hours. The video itself. The video doesn't show the toilet at all, just the shower curtain. However, the issue still remains that this was a massive invasion of privacy. The video has been deleted and Abby has admitted it was purely her fault. The update. It's been a chaotic week. Judd still refused to elaborate on how the situation should have been handled. I showed the post as a result and she did a 180 turn. She suddenly thought it may be time to stage an intervention and I agreed. We brought some of her friends as well as my cousin's wife Jess. Jess is an officer from another state and Abby seems to respect her. In this intervention we state how we were each affected by her various pranks and how in turn they affected her. Jess also spoke about how much of these pranks border on criminal territory, meaning she could be arrested or face retaliation. It seemed to have gotten to her and Abby cried a bit and promised to do better. When everybody else left, Jess stayed behind and brought to our attention about a disciplinary camp that we could send her to. The program is 6 weeks long and involves group therapy, individual therapy and constructive projects, whatever that means, and is held at a university campus. The program apparently has good reviews. Judd seems dead set in sending her to figure out her core problems. I'm a little hesitant about sending a kid away from home, but I'm the step-parent so I got no say. Edit, update. Okay, I swear Judd must be following my posts because now she's taking back what she said and is now thinking about doing what I and you fellow Redditors suggested in the first place, weekly therapy. So we agreed that I'm gonna find a therapist and I'm gonna front the bill for it since she didn't take this seriously in the first place. Comments. Comment 1. The program apparently has good reviews. Try to get more than just reviews. The troubled teen industry is pretty horrifying. There's a troubled teen subreddit for survivors. It's brutal. Oop. I'm aware, that's why I'm hesitant about this. Comment 2. Oh, thank God. I'm glad you're aware of the troubled teen industry. My heart sank so low when I read that your friend was suggesting it. Maybe it's legit, but I do feel it's a bit of an extreme response. Abby seems like a mostly good kid who just has this one stupid thing that's got stuck in her brain, normal teen stuff. I find it interesting that Judd did a 180 after reading a post, and now seems to be going from one extreme to the other. No real punishment to all punishment. I would think a bit more about that. I realize you're a step-parent and likely have no say in how Abby is parented, but I find it very concerning that your wife seems to be so easily influenced by outsiders. Honestly, if Abby's able to keep to her word to, if not end her pranks entirely, at least tone it down, I'd say you're all in the clear. Maybe suggest to Judd that you keep this program in reserve in case she needs it, and that she has a chance to prove she's learned her lesson first. Comment 3. Sent away seems extreme. Have you looked into this program? Is it held at a religious college? She might just end up abused at some of these types of teen rehabilitation camps and also just exposed to kids that are worse. I realize it might not be your call, but I would suggest try local therapy first way before sending a kid off. Oh, and I agree. Sending a kid away from home will probably just damage them more. But Judd seems intent on dishing out the harshest punishment immediately, thinking that this will nip it at the bud. Or she doesn't want to be seen as an enabler. She changed opinions real fast when I showed her the original post. New update. 7 months later. Well, it's been 7-ish months and there have been a few developments. Let's address some more things before getting there. Up until recently I have been still getting DMs asking why is this brat still in my house, why am I friends with Jess, and why did I name my wife Judd in my posts. I was drinking when I made my first post. I saved a draft and went back to it after a few hours of sobering up, fixing a bunch of grammatical mistakes but clearing some got overlooked and it just stuck. I was planning on calling her Judy. Jess and I are not friends. She is married to my cousin who I do have a good relationship with, as well as their 2 daughters and Jess's daughter. Jess has a serious problem with boundaries. As for why Abba was still living with me, you have to understand, I, her stepfather, broke Abby's, my stepdaughter's, nose. If word got out it would look really bad, I would be seen as an abuser and may have even been arrested. Several comments have pointed out how I should have saved that video for my own safety. I was pretty much going insane at that point and my wife thought nothing of it, thinking I should have just let this go until I showed her my original post. To be honest, I wanted to keep the intervention that we had smaller that didn't involve her friends because I felt they did not need to know about it. I just wanted her grandparents and Jess to show up, but I was convinced otherwise. Update. We decided that we would send Abby to weekly therapy. We were under the agreement that I would find and pay for it, and if it worked my wife would pay me back. It did work. Abby improved by a lot. She has realized how much damage she has done and is working to improve things. She has even begun to do volunteer work as well, which I didn't think she would do. She has apologized profusely, realizing how disgusting her prank was. She has also deleted her TikTok account, claiming that's where she got all the ideas from. We decided we would get her a new smartphone for her birthday 3 months ago for the improvement she's shown. We took away all smart devices as punishment. I don't think I mentioned that before. As for me and my wife, I gave her an ultimatum. Since therapy worked for Abby, it would be time we go to couples therapy or else we separate. We were having problems before this whole incident showed up, and now it kinda has to be forced. Past 2 years we've been living more like roommates and her enabling behavior is finally causing things to fall apart. She reluctantly agreed. It ended up being short-lived. She spoke during our sessions how I take things out of proportion and I went too far posting the incident online. She revealed that she was indeed following my posts and that's why she changed her mind about the camp. Our therapist then asked us both if we loved each other at all. I was honest and said yes, but it's becoming difficult. My wife on the other hand said she was in love with the idea of me. I needed a minute if I heard that right, and she went on how I was apparently a catch. I was younger than her, had a stable job and owned a house, and she thought my loyalty was a bonus. I don't why, but I asked her if she cheated on me and she said no. But it doesn't matter, she just revealed that she settled for me. I filed for divorce 2 months ago. We had a prenup, so things are going smoothly other than her erroneously claiming some jewelry is hers, but my lawyer seems to think that it should be finalized within 1 to 2 months. So my Sabex has moved out along with Abby. My dog misses them, she just sits by the door waiting for hours for them to come back. Stabex is not happy about how things have progressed. She has been calling me a spineless bastard who couldn't just tolerate how things are and has been saying to everyone who will listen. But behind closed doors she's been blaming Abby for her divorce, claiming it was her behavior that caused it. I know this because she has called me and texted me semi-regularly. Abby is living with her grandparents because apparently her mother can't deal with her right now. I actually liked my in-laws. They were real good people and they apologized for their daughter's actions and even offered to reimburse me for Abby therapy sessions. They told me that they were going to take care of Abby because it seems her mother has finally lost it. I spoke with Abby and assured her that this wasn't her fault. Chances are we were going to divorce regardless. She then told me that she didn't want me to leave and that I was the closest thing to father she ever had. This surprised me. I never really saw myself as a parental figure for Abby. I only really did the minimal. Outside of that, I just paid for school events, supplies, and would carve out some time for her, but I did leave it up to her if she wanted to spend time with me. I told her that maybe when she turns 18 we can pick up where we left off, but until then I don't think we can see each other. Her mother would definitely try to keep her away from me, and to be honest I need some time away from Abby as well. Things are so quiet at home that it's relaxing. So there you go, I don't even care if my CBEX finds this post. TLDR. Sent Abby to therapy, it worked, but now me and her mother are divorcing and things are just falling apart. Comments. Comment 1. I figured this was where this was headed. Good for you, you deserve better OP, and congrats on being smart enough to get a prenup. OP. You know, when I brought up the prenup she was hesitant and took about 4 months to get her to sign it. Guess that alone should have screamed problems. Comment 2. So your ex-wife didn't get the idea that if she loved you and invested in being more than a roommate, you two would still be married? Like, what's the deal here? To your ex, not you. Advice. Get your dog another dog to be busy. He will forget them at some point. Might also search for a dog daycare somewhere so he can meet other pet friends. OP. Honesty. I think she is just incapable of forming a relationship beyond a superficial one at this point. As for my dog, I did hire a dog walker for her during the day after they moved out. Guess I'll look into doggy daycare too. My broke best friend refused a job at my restaurant, saying being a server is low and not respectable. Original post. This happened just before. My friend is broke, he hasn't worked in over a year, he's running out of savings and has even had to ask his parents to support him. I asked him many times why he doesn't try to get a job that's not in his field. He's got a computer science degree but has never worked in the field a single day in his life since graduating. He's turned down lots of jobs for reasons. They don't pay him enough, they won't give him a higher up position right off the bat, etc. I'm well aware he's deluded in that sense, but he has many other good qualities and that's why I love the guy. So since graduating the only job he's done is share marketing, something like online investing, in Forex. He said he made about $20 a day and that it was enough for him. He's single, lives in a shared house and doesn't spend much. Whatever makes him happy, right? The thing is he's totally broke. I don't think he really is making even $20 a day on the shares because he's run out of money. He's stressed out and won't stop complaining about money problems. This is confusing for me and I think it comes down to his pride not allowing him to get a job that's not fit for his ego. Now, I work as a server in a very nice restaurant and have offered him a job as a server many times. I have a great relationship with my boss and after telling him my friend's situation he didn't hesitate to say he wanted to help and would like to offer him a full-time job. My friend has been turning it down for months without really giving much of an explanation. Today he called me saying his parents have cut him off and asked to borrow money from me. I said that as a personal rule I do not lend money to anyone, but that he was welcome to start working tomorrow with me. He again turned down the offer and I got a bit frustrated because I'm offering him a solution to his money problem but he won't accept it. So we got into a bit of a banter and he finally confessed he thinks being a server is low and doesn't get you people's respect. I told him respect is earned by getting off your ass and doing whatever you have to make ends meet. I asked him if he thinks I'm low and he backpedaled saying he didn't mean I in particular was low, but the job itself was. He then straight out told me nobody can respect me working as a waiter in my 30s. Wow. TBH. I'm pretty upset, he thinks I am low for working as a server? I got a degree too but I couldn't find a job in my field so I had to take the first job I could. I'm not some prissy prick thinking I'm too good to serve others. I take pride in being a waiter and doing a great job. I'm so hurt by his comments. Why is he my friend if he thinks I'm low? I didn't want to say something nasty or get into an argument with him so I only told him he was being very offensive and I felt like he needed time to think about what he said to me. He replied saying there was nothing to think about, then gave me a list of low jobs like street sweeper, cleaner etc. and said it's a fact those are low, not respected jobs. I asked him to apologize before this snowballed into a full-blown argument and he said he stood by what he said. I don't want to overreact, but I don't know if we can keep being friends after this. I really don't know what to do. I don't want to badmouth him, but he should examine his life and learn empathy. I'm a very easygoing and forgiving person, but what he said hurt me and was idiotic. The man who refuses to work is calling me low. I don't know what to do. TL.dr friend is broke. I offered him a job in a restaurant, but he turned it down, saying it is low and not a well-respected job. Top comments. Comment 1. Honestly, be happy he didn't take the job. Because with that attitude he wouldn't have lasted long and tarnished your rep with it. I don't want to overreact, but I don't know if we can keep being friends after this. Honestly, don't keep him as a friend. Doesn't seem that you get much out of the friendship anyway. Comment 2. Funny. Pompous ass is too good to work as a waiter but isn't above asking to borrow money from a waiter because he's too pathetic to go earn a living to take care of himself. It's easy. Take the job off the table because it's not appreciated or respected by him, and it will only end bad for you and your generous boss. Don't lend your friend anything and let him figure out his problems on his own. Simple life lesson coming. Update. AIReddit November 24, 2018, next day. I made this post yesterday asking for advice on how to handle the situation with my friend. Basically, he's very broke and his parents have cut him off. I've been offering him a job in the restaurant I work in for months and he always turned it down. His situation got so bad he came to me yesterday asking to borrow money. I don't lend money to anyone as a rule, but I told him there'll always be a plate of food for him in my house and he was welcome to accept the job offer and start working with me the very next day. Well, long story short, we had a bit of an argument, if you can call it that, and he finally confessed he thinks being a server is low and won't earn him people's respect. In an interesting turn of events, he called me today and said he'd thought it through and had decided he's willing to accept the job only with one condition, as if he was the one doing me the favor, that he's to be made manager right off the bat and that he should move in with me so that I can drive him to work because the bus from his house to my workplace takes 35 minutes and that's over an hour of commuting a day. He then suggested I move my youngest daughter into my elder daughter's room so that there's an empty bedroom for him in my house. So he obviously had given this some thought. I was dumbfounded. The sense of entitlement and the level of pride you gotta have to make those demands is astonishing. I know he's never had a proper job, but he's not stupid. He has to know you can't be made manager if you don't even know the names of their dishes or how to serve a coffee. It's all about his pride. He's got an ego bigger than I thought. He can't be humble enough to accept a waiter job and work things out from there. He needs to be made manager so that it won't hurt his pride as much. I was so out of words I said I don't want to talk and hung up. I can't explain how off-putting that conversation was. I feel repelled by him. I feel disgusted, as if something has changed inside me. I can't have a person like him in my life. What makes a person refuse all help just out of sheer pride? My wife says I've been patient and kind enough to him throughout the years and I should let him figure things out on his own. He really is broke. Before his parents cut him off, they were covering his rent bills and he survived on the $20 a day he claimed to be making investing in Forex. I know he barely eats and can't even afford a new pair of shoes, and some other stuff. I know he's got no money, but then why won't he accept the job? He's not shy, has no mental health issues, and has no problem dealing with people. He's refused many other jobs in the past. Even jobs related to his degree, computer science. He's got the wrong idea that he should be given higher up positions right from the start because he's him, and that's what he deserves. That's the reason he hasn't worked a single day since graduating like a decade ago. Anyway, I've gone to do some deep thinking and reevaluate this friendship because I don't like the person he's becoming. His dad is a bus driver and his mother a retired teacher. They are lovely, humble, down-to-earth people. I think they've done the right thing cutting him off. I know they're both struggling financially, so it's not fair for their son to leech off them. His mother even had to go back to work doing some tutoring in order to make some extra money to be able to support my friend. I'd be so ashamed if I made my 70-year-old mother go back to work just so I could be sitting at home dreaming of landing the perfect job while actively dying to get one. Anyway, I'm rambling. Sorry, I'm just so mad. My wife says it's time to cut the cord and distance ourselves from him. I think she might be right. Edit. A yellow star has appeared next to my name. Does this mean I'm the sheriff now?